29-year-old Hirayama Tatsuya works at a pretty rough company, but on his day off he escapes into hiking, because it's his passion. Then, while heading back through the city, he suddenly trips over a glowing, magical circle sitting right on the ground. Tatsuya barely had time to blink before he was face to face with a king on his throne, surrounded by luxury, silky furniture, a plush red carpet, and armed soldiers lined up along the walls like they owned the silence. Hirayama spun around and spotted people with brown and blonde hair. Then he saw a whole bunch of men and women in blazers, like they'd dressed up as high schoolers, only to look exactly like delinquents. They had to be dealing with the same mess as him. Right then, the gang's blonde leader, missing teeth and all, stepped up and questioned the king about this place. The king leaned in and warned, "This is the kingdom of Ireland. Every 100 years, monsters come back and the whole world pays the price, crushing the land and wrecking the cities as if they're nothing, and the terrifying truth is brutal. The knights and adventurer guilds can't stop them, so they have to summon heroes from Earth, people with absurdly strong powers." Then the king slammed down gleaming silver cards, each one 5 cm by 1 cm, 6 total, 1 for every pest and 5 for the crew. The gang's leader, blonde, missing teeth, grinning like he won, proudly declared that the skill on his card was a lightning attack. But when the pest finally got its turn, the blonde gang leader was summoned by the old man, and everyone froze in shock when Tatsuya blurted out that his skill was plant cultivation and agricultural equipment. Their reactions went stone cold, because the pest's skill card wasn't anything mystical at all, just pure agricultural know-how. They're shocked because they thought this would unleash some crazy, extraordinary power. But Hirayama's skill is all about farming, and it feels wildly out of place compared to what they expected. The king cut through everything with a soft cough that snapped everyone's eyes back to him. Then he declared, "We're heading for the imperial capital, time to train for whatever comes next." The very next day, after the monster flood, they pitched camp deep in a massive forest, and the road to the capital meant a brutal 1.5-day trek on foot, maze trails and all. A magical compass sat in their hands, pointing the only way forward. They soon realized this wasn't just any woods. It was a labyrinth, packed with monsters so vicious they'd chew you up and spit you out. This was the forest of no return, a stronghold where nobody leaves unscathed. Before they even left the kingdom, a legendary priest pressed amulets into their hands, and that's why they could stroll straight into the forest like it was nothing. He told them, for the next 48 hours, no monsters will show up, unless you go looking for trouble. So they could slip through the forest for a while, totally free from monster interference, and everyone in the hero group quickly realized Tatsuya's farming skills were seriously lacking. They refused to talk to him, and it became his daily curse, until Tatsuya started feeling totally pushed out. One night, Tetsuya snapped away from their camp and curled up inside his sleeping bag. But the moment he drifted off, the whole world around him twisted as the scene changed while he was still asleep. A toothless man with a Momoto slipped in to check on him, and the moment the group realized Tatsuya's useless farming was slowing their safety, they decided that even if killing him outright would look bad, dumping him in the forest would be just as deadly for one of them. A black-haired girl's regret hit her hard, and she whispered an apology to Tatsuya as he slept. Yet the choice was already locked in, and the group pushed to bring everyone along. The king handed out water, food, and money, leaving Tatsuya with nothing. Next morning, when Tatsuya finally wakes up, he looks around and boom, the whole squad of school heroes is gone without a trace. Tatsuya throws out what he's got: sleeping bag, water bottle, knife, pot, plate, salt and pepper, chocolate bread, and solid curry. But it's still not going to stretch past a single day, and the real nightmare is water, even with his 1,500 milliliters that should carry him through. He's also the only one with a sleeping bag, while he's sitting on that 1,500 milliliters, because everyone else is worse off. And yeah, he's still the only one with the sleeping bag, even with the same 1,500 milliliters of water meant to last him through the day. Tatsuya already knows the water won't last, and the king's warning hangs in his mind. This forest is crawling with danger, with monsters possibly lurking in the shadows. So with food and water running low, he's not just stressed about survival, he's terrified something monstrous could strike at any moment. Tatsuya finally understands. Survival isn't a wish, it's food, water, and shelter right now, and he knows wandering blindly will get him killed with supplies running dry. So he pushes himself to stay alive while scrambling to figure out everything about the world around him. In the moving scene, Tatsuya's whole focus snaps into place. Find shelter, then hunt for food, because he knows he can go a full week without eating, but one thing he can't survive without is water. Tatsuya figured it out. Only 2 or 3 days left before he dropped, so he pushed through the wasteland and spotted a river nearby before he finally stumbled upon the cave. But the water looked like sludge, murky, grimy, and absolutely not safe to drink. Tatsuya knew he had to filter the water before boiling it to wipe out bacteria and germs, but he had zero clue how to do it. And that struggle had him pacing, begging for internet so he could hunt down a real solution. Surprise hit him hard. One of his chaotic skills was a level 10, clean search. And Tatsuya knew he'd have to unleash it in a world where level 5 was the absolute ceiling. With level 10 in his pocket, he wasn't just strong. He was the walking definition of a miracle. He fired up his phone, and somehow the battery just wouldn't die, while the signal stayed crystal clear the whole time. Tatsuya smashes the water problem by filtering it and then boiling it to safety, just like the level 10, clean search instructions he managed to grab. After he finally gets clean water in his hands, Tatsuya clocked that the real headache now was food, so he grabbed nuts and prowled the forest, hunting animals with hungry purpose. While Tatsuya was hunting for food in the forest, he stumbled on something that chilled him to the bone, a skeletonized corpse lying there. Even with his stomach in knots, Tatsuya still bowed his head and prayed for the dead, until he caught sight of the body clutching farming tools, and pure confusion exploded in his chest. Tatsuya stumbled on the ruins of a busted hut in the patchwork fields nearby, and it screamed farmer to him. Then the grim thought hit hard. The poor guy might have wasted away from sickness. While Tatsuya was toiling in the fields, he spotted a rusty knife lying beside the corpse. Tatsuya realized the person was just a local farmer, and that one detail snapped everything into place. Now he couldn't stop wondering what terrible thing had happened there. In this brutal moment, Tatsuya finally understood that in another world you don't just fear monsters. You also starve to death and fast. He tore through the ruined hut, hunting for anything he could cook and save for later, but all he turned up were a couple busted tables, no food he could store. If Tatsuya could just use his skills, he'd start eyeing one plan after another, restarting farming on the abandoned land around him, until he saw it was choked with wild grass and completely stripped of seeds, leaving him totally baffled on where to even begin. Then Tatsuya got hit with a shock. His level 10 creation skill had just kicked on, and with it he could forge seeds. Sure enough, the quickest thing he could grow was already sprouting beans. Tatsuya gasped when his skills unleashed some straight-up miracle power. 1 second he didn't know what was happening, and the next he was staring at bean sprouts in his own hands. Tatsuya dug through everything he knew about bean sprouts and locked onto the key. They thrive in the dark, and once he keeps them out of sunlight, he can plant them within a week. Then his seed-making skill let him bring farming back to that abandoned place from the ground up. Tatsuya got a pack of ready-to-plant seeds and immediately started tearing into the soil, digging hole after hole. Then he froze in shock when his level 10 skill for farming tools kicked in. This technique let him control the land tools with ruthless ease, fast, smooth, and totally effortless. It hit him, this power wasn't just useful, it was basically an unfair cheat code. With a flick, Tatsuya churned the ground and planted vegetable seeds right out of his own palm. Then he scavenged shade from the broken ruins to build a quick shelter for his fresh crops. Once again, Tatsuya snapped awake to a divine voice announcing his brand new power to cultivate level 10 plants. And even though he was dying to ask questions, the answers never came. So he turned to one thing that mattered, figuring out exactly what these plants need to grow big and strong. Tatsuya finally figured out the truth behind growing plants. It's not just sprouts, you also need a steady supply of carbohydrates. Tatsuya went with carrots and lotus roots, loading up on carbs so he could survive on a substitute crop. And when it came to grains like rice and wheat, he started plotting farming strategies to keep himself alive in this brutal situation. Tatsuya finally managed to make carrot seeds take root and grow. He shelved his plans to plant wheat and rice for now. Then, right as Tatsuya was mulling it over, a cold breeze slid down his spine, and unease hit hard until he suddenly clocked something that scared him to the core. A monstrous wolf crouched behind the tree, totally hidden and ready to pounce. This wolf was absolutely massive, like a Siberian husky blown up 5 times over. Tatsuya named it the Silver Fang, and once he saw its massive bulk, the name fit perfectly. This wasn't some ordinary wolf, it was a terrifying monster, and panic slammed into him as he wondered whether his protective charm had finally quit, leaving him with one brutal choice. He clenched the pickaxe and held on. The second their eyes locked, fear slammed into Tatsuya's chest. Because this wolf was way bigger than the tigers he'd seen at the zoo, and there wasn't any iron barrier between them. Tatsuya faced that monster with next to no protection, and pure terror slammed into him. He froze on the spot, sweating buckets, and almost lost control of his own body. As the giant wolf barreled closer, Tatsuya suddenly snapped his pole like a warning, swinging it hard to scare it off. But that threat meant nothing against a wolf so close it could snap its massive jaws shut. Right when Tatsuya's situation started spiraling out of control, his level 10 farming tool, an agricultural skill he didn't even notice, suddenly kicked on by itself. With a brutal yank, the hole in his hand slammed into the wolf's head, ripping through the air so hard it shrieked like wind. And then he stared in horror as the wolf's body turned into charred remains. Tatsuya flinched when he saw the wolf's flesh, even though he'd already been thinking of using the monster's meat for food. Tatsuya stared in horror as the wolf meat turned totally to carbon from that earlier magic blast, and then he realized hunting food from monsters was going to be way harder than he ever thought. So he sank into sadness, realizing this situation wasn't going to be as simple as he'd hoped. After hours of grinding work in the fields, Tatsuya crashed into exhaustion and thirst, and then the hunger hit, hard, relentless, and growing by the second. His supplies were nearly wiped out, leaving just one last thing: solid curry. He knew it would seriously boost the flavor, but he clung to it like a final weapon. Still, he hunted for more food, and all he could snag was a snake. Tatsuya wasn't sure if it was safe or even worth it, but the memory hit him. Snakes had protein, and people swore they tasted kinda like bird meat. Then Tatsuya scoured the web for answers, while hunting a way to trap the snake. He hit on a weird way to scorch his own hair just to pull the snake's focus, and when Tatsuya saw it, surprise and confusion crashed over him at once. But after digging deeper, Tatsuya discovered that the crackling from the burning hair sounded just like snakes when they're ready to mate. Then he stared in shock as the plants shot up so fast that within half a day, sprouts were bursting out of the ground, and it hit him. His gardening skills weren't just good, they were ruthless and brilliant, because before long, Tatsuya had snagged 2 snakes with zero trouble to use as his next meal. The very next afternoon, Tatsuya walked over and found the bean sprouts already ready to eat, even though they weren't exactly growing at lightning speed. So yeah, he couldn't help but stare in total shock. Tatsuya also heard that snake meat tastes just like chicken, so he grabbed the snake pieces and cooked them up. Tatsuya fired up a pot of boiling water, then dumped in the salt and pepper snake meat and fresh bean sprouts, and finally tested a bite of the canned snake pieces he'd cooked. Tatsuya frowned at the bland taste, then tossed in salt and pepper before the pot could cool, desperate to turn his dish into something way better. After he dug into bean sprouts and snake meat, Tatsuya felt that warm, familiar buzz like chicken soup, salt and pepper hitting just right. Then he grinned because the bean sprouts stayed crisp, tasty, and perfect. And that only cranked up his excitement to finally dig into the carrots Tatsuya had planted. Next day, Tatsuya decided it was carrot time, and he was determined to whip up snake slices with bean sprouts and those fresh carrots. Tatsuya noticed his salt and pepper were almost gone. Tatsuya realized that with no seasoning, every dish would taste dull. Yet even with his stomach growling, he felt thankful he could still eat, and he eagerly popped a carrot piece into his mouth, loving every bite from his own hard-earned farming. He then craved more variety to hit his nutritional needs, and when he finally tasted that cooked carrot, a sweet rush hit him like something he'd never felt before. That boiled carrot hit like candy, sweet, rich, and packed with sugar, and it had Tatsuya suddenly wondering if carrots could be turned into a real sugar source. Meanwhile, the bean sprouts still snapped with that usual crunchy, tasty bite. Meanwhile, Tatsuya couldn't stop staring at the sneaky vegetable's mouth-watering flavor. Then, as he started to grow bigger, a tiny creature popped up right in front of him, about 15 to 20 centimeters long, like a little dwarf or maybe a tall fairy, dressed in clothes that looked straight out of storybooks. The dwarf fairy creature rocked rabbit ears on its head, waist-length silver hair, and bright blue eyes, so stunning that Tatsuya couldn't stop staring, because he was the only one who had seen it. In this fantasy world, the monsters suddenly acted adorable and hilarious, and Tatsuya couldn't believe it, because it felt exactly like the sweet, fun side of fantasy he'd only ever heard about in stories, or seen when he was around kids. That rabbit-looking creature, a handwritten rabbit, was paranoid about some troublemaking rabbit swiping its carrots, so it made a little cute motion to prove it had no bad intentions. Tatsuya watched and thought the gesture was adorable, then offered it a carrot. The rabbit bobbed its head like crazy, clearly trying to prove it was all ears for the rabbit-riding hand. Then it explained. These weren't just any rabbits, they were a forest rabbit race that calls themselves hand-riding rabbits, because the great people named them that way, and when they're almost adults, they go through a real ritual. To roam solo, snag treasure for their burrow, and earn the badge of being recognized as adults. Tatsuya finally started to crack the mystery of this world's creatures and how their coming-of-age rituals work. The rabbits amazed him with their sweet innocence and proper manners, and everything clicked when he learned Marie, the handwriting rabbit, had to bring back a perfect carrot to their village to be recognized as an adult. That's when he realized how precious carrots were here and why they might be rare as lightning. When he asked what happened to Marie, he saw her locked onto the bunch of carrots he'd set aside earlier. She couldn't hide it, her eyes were hungry, and she started salivating like she was in total awe. Even better, she looked so excited, like the carrot was still putting on its best performance just for her. Tatsuya pushed the leftover boiled carrot from his breakfast right in front of Marie, and the second she caught that warm aroma, her mouth flooded with saliva like a waterfall, proving just how prized carrots were in their world, and that even the handwritten rabbit race knew to appreciate Tatsuya's tasty harvest. After Tatsuya handed Marie carrots, they instantly bonded even more, and the whole handwritten rabbit race suddenly made sense. Because when Marie got that carrot, she tore into it so fast they just stared in shock. Her eyes widened, then she dove in with pure, excited hunger. Marie practically bounced with joy as she chomped into the carrot, shouting that it was the sweetest, most delicious thing she'd ever tasted, like her first ever bite of pure heaven. While Tatsuya stood there stunned at just how insanely tasty it was, so overwhelmed by that bold sweetness that after the boiled carrot hit his tongue, he even started thinking about turning it into sugar. Marie's eyes snapped to the pile of carrots Tatsuya had set aside, and her mouth practically watered. She could grab those delicious carrots, bring them home, and charge back to their burrow like a hero the moment Tatsuya offered her a stash. Marie's jaw dropped as she couldn't wrap her head around Tatsuya offering such rare, priceless handwritten rabbit breed carrots. Tatsuya insisted, "Take these," and Marie nodded so hard her excitement burst out, grateful as ever. And that's when she returned with 3 carrots tied with a ribbon, proving just how much those carrots mattered to her, and how Tatsuya was finally grasping their value. Marie grins wide and slips back into her burrow, and that night leaves Tatsuya utterly baffled and totally lost. Tatsuya's fists clench with frustration. He can't catch a single snake, so his protein plan keeps slipping through his fingers. He even dangled his hair like bait, but not a single snake slithered close. Tatsuya's stomach drops, because you can't live on sprouts and carrots forever, not when protein is the whole game. Chowing down on boiled carrots, Tatsuya starts mulling over his next move. Should he ditch the usual and start growing legumes to get animal protein another way? Suddenly, 10 wild riding rabbits burst out from the bushes like they'd been waiting to ambush someone. This moment shows Tatsuya, stuck in a tough spot, refusing to give up as he hunts for a way to get his nutrition, then find his way back to Marie and her crew. Confused and worn down, he's suddenly hit with a surprise visit from the 10 rabbits. They bow, greet him politely, and ask if he's the same kind guy who fed them carrots. Tatsuya freezes, baffled, because he has no clue why they're here. The scribbled rabbits swore they'd come to thank Tatsuya for the sweet carrots he fed them earlier. Then their gaze snapped to the chaos outside their cage, where they were hauling with wire, and it turned out to be a massive wild boar, likely around 100 kilograms. Tatsuya freezes in awe as he watches them drag that massive animal with their tiny bodies, and then it clicks. These rabbits want to repay him by handing over the wild boar for the yummy carrots he fed them earlier, proving those handwritten rabbits run a full-on trade system for swapping goods. Tatsuya leaned in and grilled the handwritten rabbits about how they managed to bag such a giant wild boar, and they didn't even hesitate. They bragged that they were real hunters, then flexed their skills right there. Tatsuya stared in disbelief at their skills. Then he almost fell over when he saw even the handwritten rabbits clutching tiny spears. He just had to say it, shocked out loud, because these rabbits had begged for carrots before, and he'd assumed they were herbivores. But they straightened him out fast. Carrots weren't their staple at all, they were a rare luxury treat for them. Turns out most of them weren't picky plant-eaters at all. They were straight-up omnivores. And then they blurted out they wanted to munch on carrots, offering to swap a wild boar for them and keep that trade going. That surge in new residents meant Tatsuya's animal protein problem finally got shut down. Because those handwritten rabbits showed up, brought wild boars with them, and filled his renovated space. Tatsuya stumbled on a busted little hut and froze. Inside was a corpse, plus a handwritten note left behind by the person who lived there before. He used to hide in a cave, but now he can't stand it, so he's tearing into that hut to make a better place to live. Now Tatsuya finally has some breathing room, thanks to the handwriting rabbit, which hustles through the chores, fetching the animals and even helping around the house, while munching on carrots as payment. Seeing them there instantly eases Tatsuya's fear. He won't run out of meat. Even though he already planted wheat and rice, the harvest won't be ready for about a month. Then Tatsuya plans to hit the trail again, hunting for the human village for the next few months. Once he finally finds it, he's staying put and turning that little hut into a real home, way better than the cave he used to live in. And get this, he puts his handle tool to work, and it wrecks in woodworking, even though it was never meant to make boards. He gets the wood cut, but the big problem hits hard. No nails. That's when the handwriting rabbit jumps in, crafting nails out of scrap they pull from the adventurer's corpse from the mine. Tatsuya's jaw drops when the handwriting rabbit proves it isn't just animal-brained. It can think, spark fire, and even work metal with the dead adventurer's tools and armor, helping him make wooden nail crafts and patch up the hut they're repairing. And when the day ends, he realizes those ordinary rabbits were secretly smart and wildly capable, using whatever they found to power his whole repair job. They managed to haul together a pretty big hut and warehouse, then set up the kitchen gear the last adventurer left behind. Their tiny hut was about the size of a studio apartment, but the upgraded kitchen gear supercharged Tatsu's cooking and made every meal feel like an upgrade. And the elite rabbit riders kept the whole place locked down tight to guard it. Tatsuya finally decided it was time to break out of the cave, and to celebrate, he whipped up a special dish with the last bit of curry he had left. He whipped up a crazy curry packed with wild pork and hearty carrots, pure celebration for his move into the new hut. Tatsuya hands the handwritten rabbit a steaming bowl of carrot curry, and you can bet that rabbit absolutely adores it. They're so obsessed they polish off the curry in a blink, fast enough that Tatsuya doesn't even get a taste. That handwritten little rabbit looks totally pleased, then, without a second thought, it plops into place and falls asleep. One of them even curls up in Tatsu's lap, and Tatsuya can't shake the weird feeling that this hand-drawn rabbit really likes it, like a dog or a cat coming close for comfort. Tatsuya goes right up to one of them and tries to pet it like a cat or a dog, and when he feels those ears and tails, he's shocked. So soft and so nice to touch. The moment Tatsuya taps the tip of one handwritten rabbit's tail, the rabbit jolts in surprise, lets out a teasing little reaction, and then dares him to do it again. Tatsuya toys with the rabbit's tail tip, and the moment he does, the rabbit reacts in the most unexpected way. After Tatsuya finishes playing with one of the handwritten rabbits, the little rabbit stares at him in shock and blurts out that his technique is insanely impressive. Then its eyes droop, it looks wiped out, and it finally plops to sleep right in Tatsuya's lap. The next morning, Tatsuya jolted awake, then scanned the warehouse and everything around him and found nothing. Not a single handwritten note from the rabbits he'd been hunting. He tore through every corner but found nothing, utterly baffled and lost. And it still made zero sense why they vanished without saying goodbye. Tatsuya knelt in the garden all afternoon, slicing and processing wild boar meat until he finally had everything ready to clock his work for the day. Even though Tatsuya was caught off guard by the rabbit's sudden exit, he shook it off and plunged back into his daily routine without overthinking it. After the handwritten rabbits vanished, Tatsuya felt a crushing loneliness settle in his chest. But when night finally fell, he understood there was no point in pouring out his loneliness. Out of nowhere, this drop-dead gorgeous girl burst in with 30 handwritten rabbits, and strapped to her, there was a rabbit-like creature the size of a human, just chilling inside her. She introduced herself as Sonya to Tatsuya, looking like a 15-year-old, simple up top, but still undeniably cute with a body that could make anyone stop and stare. Sonya, the rabbit queen, leaned in and told Tatsuya why they'd come. She said they were done with their old home and wanted to move to a place packed with top-tier carrots, and the reason they trusted him was simple. He already gave them access to that food, so now they were ready to trade meat for the carrots he could provide. Tatsuya stared at his bland cooking and hated every bite, especially since he'd run out of yakiniku sauce. Even with that wild boar meat tasting good, the bland lack of seasoning crushed his mood. So Tatsuya started praying he could somehow order seasoning from Japan. Then bam, his interdimensional logistics power kicked on out of nowhere, and it shocked him, because that ability let him order goods from another dimension anytime. Without warning, an ancient altar and a glowing offering box materialized in the middle of the warehouse. Tatsuya froze in shock when an altar and offering box just materialized asterisk inside his warehouse, and a strange voice boomed out, swearing it was the harvest god, or maybe the agriculture god. Tatsuya couldn't wrap his head around it. Why in the world did the harvest god show up tied to his interdimensional logistics power? The god told Tatsuya, "You can hear me because you rule agriculture, and it's fate that I'm here to help you supercharge your farming life." The god dangled a deal in front of Tatsuya. grow crops with top-notch quality and get extra perks too, but one rule burned into the promise: he can't quit farming. Tatsuya was lost. All he wanted was a little spice for his food. So the god nodded and made it happen, swearing Tatsuya would feast on delicious, high-quality harvests. Tatsuya nearly choked when he realized his interdimensional logistics power let him snag items from the world before. Then the harvest god grinned and said he could pick anything he wanted from the gift catalog, even from that past world. Tatsuya tore through the catalog hunting for yakiniku sauce. Then his eyes landed on the price tag, about 278 yen. The harvest god demands payment, straight-up cash, saying he needs money too just to hand over the item. The god tells Tatsuya he can huck world currency into the offering box, and the god will swap it for Japanese yen, no questions asked. Yet Tatsuya is stuck in his current life with zero money to his name. Even the god with all that power still has to lean on the people who worship them. Tatsuya leans in and asks Sonya if she's got any money on her. Sonya tells Tatsuya that their group doesn't trade or buy like everyone else, but she's got a nasty little habit. She shoves a sack of gold coins stolen off an adventurer's corpse into his hands and says it'll cost him 1 carat. Then she flips open the big bag, packed with over 100 gold coins, and even Tatsuya can barely lift it without straining. Sonya hands over a sack of gold coins like it's nothing, trading it for just 1 carat. And that's the point. For rabbits who mostly live in the forest, gold money doesn't matter much, because they're after what they can actually eat, not shiny value, while humans would treat those same coins like pure treasure compared to carats. Tatsuya flicked a gold coin into the offering box and acted out a godlike ritual, but when he scanned the digital balance on the catalog cover, it only showed a single yen. Tatsuya snapped with shock and disappointment, because he knew the gold coin's real value dwarfed what the harvest god tried to show him. The harvest god told Tatsuya this was all part of turning gold into money, but Tatsuya's gut wouldn't let it slide, because the harvest god barely got any offerings compared to the business god or the birth god, who were raking in thousands in one go. So yeah, Tatsuya wanted his gold coin converted into something way better, but seeing the harvest god struggle to pull in big money made him burn with envy. Then he kept talking to him through the offering box, feeding him cash as payment for his power to send items from another dimension. Even though Tatsuya's annoyed at the harvest god for coming right out and asking, he quickly realized the god's power was too valuable to ignore, and he agreed to pay. After he stuffed the offering box with a massive pile of gold coins. 1 second the catalog balance snapped to 325 yen. Then Tatsuya's face lit up, and he went straight for the yakiniku sauce he'd been craving for ages. With the sacred power of the harvest god, a bottle appeared right in front of him like magic. That smoke show was pure proof. The harvest god could instantly grant Tatsuya's wishes right on the spot if he paid the price with offerings. Right here, Tatsuya fires up the stove and whips up a mouth-watering dish using the brand-new yakiniku sauce he just snagged from the harvest god. He simmered the wild boar with the sauce, tossing in carrots and Sonya's sprouts until everything turned rich and savory. That handwritten note blew them away, and they couldn't stop gushing about how amazing and delicious it was. Tatsuya couldn't wait. He sank his teeth into wild boar smothered in yakiniku sauce and immediately dove into the taste with pure excitement. He took a bite of that rich, sweet meat, and it practically dissolved on his tongue, hitting him with an unreal sensation. The sprouts crackled in every bite, and that fresh aroma made the whole meal feel 10 times better. Everyone who tasted it nodded in approval. Tatsuya dug into his creation with yakiniku sauce, and Sonya and him both froze at just how insanely good it was, while Tatsuya even pointed out that the carrots sweetened the whole dish. Suddenly, their chat veered into a weirdly surprising topic: whether eating meat really messes with rabbits, and Sonya admitted that after piling on rabbit meat, she gets uncomfortable in specific parts of her body. Tatsuya blinked in shock at that comment, especially since they've been glued to each other during basically every activity. Then Sonya scooted beside Tatsuya and stressed that doing stuff again and again every day can wear you down, body and soul. The next day, Tatsuya hit a wall. Everything was already pushing past its limit, and the garlic harvest still wasn't done on his end. So he ditched the delay and started planting celery and sweet potatoes to build up his health and stamina. Tatsuya toiled in his fields, planting vegetables with skill and pure imagination. Then, right as he worked, he spotted a fox-eared, fox-tailed, human-looking figure, and it turned out to be a fox-spirit adventurer. Tatsuya froze in shock. He never thought he'd run into a human in the forest of no return. Arisa then grilled Tatsuya about what he'd been up to there, and you could practically see his confusion rising. because before this, he was only with Sonya and those rabbits. That awkward moment sparked Tatsuya's full introduction to the bigger cast and the crazy events tied to his world. And while they talked, Arisa and Tatsuya zeroed in on one thing: how to protect themselves from monster attacks in their fantasy realm. Arisa rattled off what she had stuffed in her bag: a scent pouch that shoos monsters away, and a barrier spirit that sweeps the area with a spiritual field monsters can't stand. And Tatsuya nearly froze, because he'd battled tons of monsters yet somehow never used protection like that. Arisa couldn't stop wondering why monsters didn't swarm Tatsuya all the time, and he told her he could smash them to pieces with his pickaxe. No fancy protection needed. Arisa pressed Tatsuya about why he was there, and without thinking he blurted that he was a naked dancer, then tried to ride the conversation forward by saying the place was way safer than the brutal underground area nearby, where tons of high-level adventurers had met their end. Arisa told Tatsuya that her job as a nude dancer was simple but brutal: slip into deadly dungeons, snag the gear left behind by fallen adventurers, and haul it back to the guild. Then Tatsuya warned her she couldn't charge into that dangerous dungeon alone because the risk was way too high. After that, she took a sip of the herbal tea he served and lit up, calling it delicious, and that's when their talk turned serious for real. Arisa leaned in and told Tatsuya about a city about 40 kilometers southeast of where they were standing. Arisa spilled the truth. This city's politics were a powder keg, and security was falling apart. So Tatsuya hit pause and refused to rush in until he nailed down more facts, showing just how carefully he planned before making a huge move. The whole vibe snapped the second a hand-drawn rabbit suddenly slithered into the hut, crawled up onto the table, and even started sipping Tatsuya's tea. No permission, no shame, until all he could do was smile through the bitter chaos. As soon as Arisa, who'd been sitting with them, snapped into a startled, terrified silence, the whole vibe flipped. She stumbled back a few steps, trembling, and in a shaky voice demanded that Tatsuya explain the handwritten rabbit that had just appeared out of nowhere. Arisa's jaw dropped at the rabbit's sudden appearance, and the whole scene turned tense, until she learned Tatsuya could train a handwritten rabbit just by feeding it carrots. Tatsuya told her the rabbit would trade something back for every carrot it got, and that's why it never left. Arisa stared in disbelief. She couldn't wrap her head around how he tamed a hand-drawn rabbit just by feeding it. After that, Arisa leaned in and grilled the details: what the wild boar's skin looked like, and those fangs it carried. Ever since that handwritten rabbit showed up, Tatsuya explained they've been hunting, and when he casually handled animals like it was nothing. Plus the fact the rabbit once took down a wild boar, Arisa's curiosity and nerves spiked hard. Then the moment he said he almost tossed the skin, fangs, and bones, Arisa freaked out. Bored out of her mind, Arisa suddenly lit up and demanded every single part of the wild boar, then even offered to pay for its heart if Tatsuya dried it in the sunlight. Tatsuya nodded and agreed to give her everything, and once the deal was sealed, Arisa thrust it right into his hands. Arisa throws a bag of gold coins onto the table as her offer, proving these forest boar parts are worth a fortune to her. Then she hands Tatsuya a down payment for the fangs and bones, swearing she'll carry them into the city to sell and rush back his money fast, only keeping her cut. Arisa's eyes light up as she studies those items, absolutely sure she can sell them for a huge price. When Sonya finally shows up, Arisa's jaw drops. She stumbles and hits the ground, proving she's genuinely awestruck by Queen Sonya's presence. And it all mirrors that crazy scene. A king hunting near a rabbit burrow accidentally steps on carrots guarded by rabbits that swarm up from the burrow. Boom! Suddenly it's a massive brawl, 200 handwritten rabbits clashing with an entire country, and what looked like a small mess turns into a bloody war that spills beyond the borders, dragging neighboring countries in and igniting conflicts no one saw coming. The rabbits march forward and snub every carrot the big countries hand them, shouting that they're the most advanced nation alive. Only the carrots that taste right to people from the no-return forest count. They won't even entertain offers from the other giants, and honestly it feels like the author is hinting how insanely luck favors them. Then the scene flips to a rabbit scrambling up a cliff, trying to snatch a bird that should have been an ostrich. But this thing is huge, wide-winged, eagle-like, totally wrong for an ostrich, and it looks like it can fly. The rabbit launches into a full-on hunt, stalking the bird with precision and snapping it shut with a net stretched across the tree gaps. They finally catch the bird, then waste no time, slicing the meat into pieces and tossing it on the heat while they're busy cooking the rest of the meal. Aresha, the fox girl, bursts into the scene out of nowhere. Arisa's jaw drops when she spots a strange ostrich-like bird, and the second she lays eyes on it, she screams, "Death Hawk!" Because this S-rank monster is so deadly only super high-level adventurers can bring it down, and every scrap, its meat, plus the claws and beak, cashes out for a ridiculous fortune. Arisa stared in shock as Tatsuya wrangled rabbits with his bare hands and still managed to hunt down monsters way bigger than they should be. Then she shoved a bag of cash into his arms, packed with money from the last monster sales. The moment she handed him the money, he snapped that it was 600 gold coins, called or a calcum, and that even though there were so many, the real worth lived in the even more valuable calcums, whose size didn't match their true value. A stash so big it proved their monster sales from before were a massive hit. Tatsuya cracked open the truth. Arisa's cash wasn't just money at all. It was tucked away in orichalcum coins, a rare, mysterious treasure from this fantasy world. And while they were insanely valuable out there, back in reality they only translated to 700 yen. Even though these coins were everywhere in Tatsuya's world, they were basically worthless compared to the real cash. And that's why he handed Arisa an invite, dinner tonight, and a safe spot in the warehouse. Because night was falling and camping alone in a monster-filled forest was a death wish. Then he tells her dinner will include a train he ordered ingredients for, like vegetable oil and bread flour, and you can feel how much he genuinely cares. Next thing you know, the kitchen is moving fast. Oil sizzles, the whole room fills with mouth-watering aromas. The first dish lands on the table, and before Arisa can even finish the first bite, Tatsuya dashes back to the stove to whip up the next batch. Besides the train, Tatsuya whips up special fried carrots for the rabbit hand writer. Showing he actually cares about his guest, he fires up the kitchen and cooks something everyone nearby is going to love. And that's exactly what sparks the rabbit hand writer and Risa's reactions when their train plates hit the table. They light up, smile nonstop, and keep digging in like every single bite is pure bliss. When Arisa takes a taste of the carriage, her reaction explodes with pure drama. She's stunned by the insane flavor, and it's obvious she's tasting her favorite food. Arisa's eyes lit up the moment she tasted the dish. She gasped, praised it as the best food she'd ever had, and even started calling Tatsuya by a brand new, more respectful nickname, making it crystal clear she finally respected him. Tatsuya leaned in and teased the writer's rabbit for its carrot cravings, joking it was a greedy killer that happily chowed down as it got served, praising its love for Tat's cooking, turning the whole moment into pure, friendly hype between Tatsuya and the dish he'd just made. Tatsuya had that train ready in a flash. Then it vanished the moment everyone in the room got hooked and swallowed it up with pure excitement. Tatsuya finally kicked back on the train he built with his own hands, after spending all that time cooking for everyone. Tatsuya was buzzing with excitement since he also hadn't tasted it. Then, when he finally took a bite, that meat hit him with an out-of-this-world flavor that was so ridiculously delicious it made him want more. Tatsuya also clocked how Arisa kept chewing it over and over, and now he finally gets why it hits him like a spark. His excitement spikes, and he's insanely impressed with what his cooking pulls off. Everyone dug into Tatsuya's train-cooked feast and lit up because it was insanely good. But Tatsuya couldn't shake the feeling something was missing. No rice, no sake. He figured rice would have made it perfect, even though he'd planted the rice himself already, and he knew it would take a month or two to be ready. Then he imagined sake as the ultimate sidekick to the meal. In the end, the verdict was unanimous. The train dinner was delicious, and Arisa even asked if she could join again next time. The whole night rolled to a close as a full-on hit, with smiles and happiness all around. Right now, Tatsuya is on a mission, cooking garlic steak because that juicy craving has him absolutely desperate for it. Still, that mysterious beauty shows up out of nowhere and yanks his focus right out from under him. Cool armor shining, soft pink hair glowing. So when Tatsuya spots her, his surprise snaps the quiet around the cabin, and it even messes with his plan to cook a garlic steak because he's terrified the extra garlic will wreck Sonya's stamina. Then Maria, the demon, appears too, and Tatsuya's strength instantly drains away. Maria kicked off a conversation out of nowhere, no Tatsuya prompting her, then spilled everything about her condition and even admitted just how hungry she was. Maria swaggered in and called herself a seductive demon, but the moment she spoke, you could feel her power slipping away. Tatsuya then slid the garlic steak he'd cooked right into her hands. Maria's eyes went wide in shock, and her reaction stole the whole moment. Maria took one bite of the garlic steak Tatsuya handed her, and her eyes practically lit up, because the flavor was unreal, so good that even the demon world's top chefs couldn't cook something like it. Maria tore into the garlic steak like it was her last meal, and Tatsuya's face paled as worry surged. What if she choked on how fast she was devouring it? Maria leaned in and promised him, "Garlic fuels creatures like me." She was convinced garlic didn't get processed through normal digestion at all. It got snapped up straight into her body and turned into raw magical energy the moment she ate it. Maria locked eyes with Tatsuya, studying him like a secret on the verge of breaking. Then she stepped in and told him she was out of power, begging a farmer like him for help, because the garlic she'd eaten was the only thing that could give her the magical energy back. After Maria moved in with Sonya, who already shared a home with Tatsuya, she grabbed the chance and invited Tatsuya to hit the playground and play. Tatsuya froze in shock at this sudden offer and couldn't get a word out. His house suddenly filled up. More residents showed up than ever before. After that scene ends, it hits hard. Tatsuya's quiet life as a farmer gets blown open when two women, Maria and Sonya, circle in and toss him an unexpected offer for that very night. He's stunned, a little overwhelmed, and still trying to keep his cool while he finishes his chores. So when Tatsuya shuts down their offer, both women hit him with sharp disappointment. In the end, Tatsuya's just too drained to take the offer, like he's somehow the one who's been worn out from that last business, which is honestly hilarious, until he figures out the truth. Sure, he turned it down, but Maria and Sonya might be the ones wiped out tonight, especially after Maria told him that Arisa could have tampered with the payment for the brand-new Deathhawk sale. Tatsuya, the monster, refused to trust rumors, so he bolted to the nearest adventurer guild to confirm the Deathhawk's selling price firsthand. Even though he didn't want to suspect Arisa, he needed the truth locked down so there'd be no confusion, no matter what pain was involved. He chose this move to prove he was being careful and straight when money and justice were on the line. Then the whole plan snapped into place. Head into the city to check the price of the monster they'd just acquired. And he didn't go alone. He teamed up with Sonya, the rabbit group's queen, because they weren't just there to verify a price. They were also hunting household goods and supplies. At first, Tatsuya only meant to peek at the price, but then he seized the moment and dove into shopping like it was a mission. Sonya couldn't contain her excitement, so she jumped in to join him too. It shows how Tatsuya pulls the people around him into his everyday life, like Maria and Sonya, no matter what his first goal was, and next thing you know they're all getting ready for a quick day trip to the city while Sonya hauls in a mountain of carrots to snack on. Tatsuya swore he'd get them clothes and accessories if he had the cash, and the moment it hit, Maria and Sonya shot him a shocked look. It's the kind of care that shows how Tatsuya always tries to make them happy, even while he's reeling at just how much Sonya packed for a one-day trip. And that's how their wild city adventure kicks off. Tatsuya, Maria, and Sonya racing through streets that eventually lead them straight past the forest. Right out of nowhere, a massive dragon crashes into their path, and they get slammed into a quick, brutal battle. Sonya and Maria teamed up, tore through the battle, and brought down the dragon in record time. Even with a top-tier dragon roaring down on them, they swerved out of every hit and snapped back with fast, deadly counters. Even though they come out on top, the fight wrecks the whole area and proves, loud and clear, just how deadly Sonya and Maria are in battle. Tatsuya, Maria, and Sonya kick off their wild new adventure right after they smash the dragon. Maria yanks the dragon's front leg and flings it at Sonya, and Sonya blasts up into the air with a crushing strike. Then the dragon drops out cold. Their 8 friends pile in instantly, and the whole fight is over in 10 seconds flat, proving just how terrifyingly strong they are. When the fight finally ends, Maria straight up declares she's the Duchess of the seductive demon race, except she's fallen from her throne in the demon world. With a breath of relief, she thanks Tatsuya for showing up every night, helping her bounce back after she took down the dragon. Then they lay out the plan. Use the dragon's meat for now, sell everything else back in town, skin, bones, and fangs, and even compare their prices against monsters like the Deathhawk, which is about the size of an ostrich. After they finally shattered the dragon and won, Tatsuya, Maria, and Sonya dive straight into brand new adventures, and the ride only gets wilder. Tatsuya used item box level 10, a busted skill that lets him stash items in a separate dimension, up to 1 ton, with no time limit at all. So nothing spoils, not a single thing, including the massive monsters like the Arc Dragon and Death Hawk they just wiped out, saving them from transportation chaos and keeping them in perfect condition. When Tatsuya rolled into town, the whole place buzzed with life, and Maria and Sonya just stared like they'd landed in some medieval fantasy world. Every detail felt straight out of a story. They spotted street food stalls, snagged some bites including Sat V, but the food they bought tasted so awful that Maria and Sonya couldn't swallow a single bite. Tatsuya swore it tasted like rotten meat, burned to sell. Still, Tatsuya refused to waste a single bite of the food he'd bought, because his mom had drilled it into him never to waste what you've got. Then they stormed into the Adventurers Guild, and Tatsuya's eyes snapped around the moment the doors shut behind them, taking in the exact kind of wild, fantasy buzz atmosphere you'd expect in a place like this. Tatsuya marched right up to the registration desk, where Elvin worked as the receptionist, and no hesitation at all, asked how to buy the materials. Then Tatsuya snapped his skill into action and yanked out a chunky one. 5-meter tall, wide and long item box, opened it, pulled the Death Hawk free and dropped it onto the receptionist's desk, leaving her staring in shock. Tatsuya even pushed to bring that monster's meat home with him. The receptionist offers to buy the Death Hawk for 1,500 gold coins, or 15 or a calcum coins, while slashing the cutting fee to boot, and she can't hide it. Anyone who can hunt Rankest Death Hawks isn't some ordinary person. Arisa, the bearded fox woman who'd taken care of Tatsuya before, snatched the commission after pocketing a little cash from the last Death Hawk sale, then swung into action and sold off everything Tatsuya brought. 2 Death Hawks and even the dragon's head. When Tatsuya told the guild receptionist about the extra items, her face lit up in pure shock at the monsters up for sale. Because he wasn't just hauling 2 more Death Hawks, he had a dragon head too, and she couldn't wrap her mind around it. She stared, stunned that anyone could catch that many Death Hawks, much less shove a dragon head into a box no bigger than Tatsuya's item box. And the moment that dragon showed up, it blew past the luggage box's limits, even for the heroes, while the other adventurers in the guild fell silent, shocked and uneasy. When the receptionist finally saw the dragon head Tatsuya showed them, everything changed. After wrestling with it for a while, the receptionist finally forced the words out in a shaky, trembling voice. Tatsuya held up the dragon's head for inspection, and the receptionist's wild reaction made one thing crystal clear. This dragon wasn't just dangerous, it was terrifying. Tatsuya couldn't believe the price tag. 1 dragon arc alone cost a whopping 10,000 gold. The Death Hawk raked in 1,500, and together that came out to 14,500 gold coins, which they valued at 145 million yen. Still, once it's sealed in the presentation box, the whole thing is worth only about 14,500 yen. Sure, it's big money, but Tatsuya just doesn't feel it's valuable at all, thanks to what his ability does. When he gets back, he's set on buying a beer that costs a mind-blowing 500 million yen. Then Tatsuya strolls out of the guild like a weight has finally lifted, saying the adventure inside isn't over yet. But after they realize the money from what he sold blows past what's even in the guild vault, they slam him with a wait until tomorrow. He's furious, but there's no fight to be had, so he grudgingly agrees. He chooses to crash overnight in the guild with Sonya and Maria, but his mission to keep things quiet and not wake anyone gets yanked apart when a restless adventurer storms into the guild with a deathly pale face, like something terrible just caught up to him. He demands to call the guildmaster, then learns the forest is actually inside the guild, and it's spiraling into a disaster it can't undo, with everything twisted into an irreversible mess. Chaos erupts as a terrifying, high-rank adventure crashes in, warning them of an evil Cyclops monster, an SS-class threat. This news sparks total panic across the adventurers and guild members, so hard that even the receptionist bolts to warn the guildmaster right away, because the monster is around 50 meters tall, and everyone's fears hit like a ton of bricks. Gasps tore through the wizards as their panic spilled out, and every pair of eyes in the guild locked onto the sword warrior brooding alone in the corner. Tension snapped tight in the air as the whole party stared down a critical moment, with the legendary adventurer King Marcus. He'd earned the title of the world's top-ranked adventurer, and when the evil Cyclops threat finally erupted, the whole town begged him to step in and save them. Marcus refused to slug it out with the monster by himself. Again and again he'd proved he could beat the evil Cyclops, but only because he always had someone at his side. This time, though, he stood alone. Then he swore the truth, taking on a monster that gave him just a 50% shot at winning, no matter how strong he was. Marcus refused that gamble because he valued his own life more than glory. Sure, he dangled the chance for anyone brave enough to join him, but he also made it crystal clear he wouldn't step into that kind of deadly danger. Living through the chaos the evil Cyclops was unleashing. Maria steps up and offers to face the monster with Marcus, but Marcus snaps back at first, because the danger is already real and waiting to bite. After hearing that Maria will join him, Marcus wastes no time. He agrees. Keisha just popped up out of nowhere, flashed a huge smile, and announced she wanted to help. The chief barked that she was still learning and couldn't leave yet. Keisha flinched, but she didn't fight back. Fancy ladies swept in, insisting it was only 1 week, and she practically pleaded, while the rest moaned through clenched teeth. The chief barked, "Nobody leaves until you're fully ready," and he made it crystal clear, no exceptions. To win, she has to hunt down rare ore and forge a weapon from nothing. Turns out the mine is a full-on dungeon, so the guards brave the depths to explore while locking the newbies safely inside. The elf lady straight up tells them, "Bring the guards yourself," and she even lets them pass, she allowed to go. Everyone piles out, except one girl who stays back for a drink while the rest of them slip into the dark cave. The bunny girls sprint ahead, then everything drops out from under them. A cliff. They screech to a halt at the last second. Keisha's jaw drops as those speed demons zip around with their palm-top rabbits, and the night vision makes it feel like pure magic. At last the pressure crushes her. Keisha collapses and starts shaking like crazy, and her friends immediately lose it, sprinting over in panic. Keisha doesn't just let them dig. She says adamantite is mined from monsters, and it's so rare they're willing to offer it up. He's totally lost. Keisha clamps down even harder, no way out. Because these monsters don't just attack, they test your strength. She draws her blade, then lets those enchanted gear monsters munch away, feeding them until she gets ore. Turns out it's tradition. Monsters chow down on magic weapons, and everyone just shrugs like it's normal. Still, it's seriously messed up. Everyone crowds in around the meat, and Keisha's eyes track as curry gets passed out, like everyone's bursting with anticipation. It's just curry rice, plain and simple. But the second that smell hits the air, every single person's attention snaps to it. Keisha grips her bowl with white knuckles, completely silent, staring at the food like it might explode and terrified of what comes next. One hesitant bite, then her face lights up as her expression flips, and she keeps chewing, shocked by how warm and delicious the flavor tastes. She devours it in seconds, eyes blazing and cheeks burning, and Keisha's mind can't process how something this simple could taste that insanely good. After dinner, Keisha lit up with pure joy, and that warm meal pulled everyone in tight around the fire. Blankets spilled onto the floor, and the whole group started to wind down. Keisha yawned as the fire's glow slowly died. Two girls scooted in clothes and asked in a shy whisper, and the second it hit, surprise crashed over him, leaving him painfully awkward. The girls got way too comfortable, and right then Keisha peeked out with wide eyes, completely caught off guard. Snuggled under her blanket, she stared up and spotted a blushing heart, while the campfire crackled and her pulse thundered out of control. The sun still hadn't properly climbed, yet he stretched hard, yawned wide, and kept his eyes half-lidded. Keisha looked clearly rattled, then snapped, "What happened last night?" And her exhausted face spilled the truth before she even finished. Katsuya sipped in silence, watching the others, and when she pointed out how tightly knit this crew felt, it hit everyone like an instant click. She slowly opened up, and suddenly a few boys in her village couldn't look away, because her interest wasn't just friendly anymore. Keisha tried to confess, her heart hammered like crazy, but nerves totally got the best of her, and she faltered at the worst time. Unable to hold it in any longer, Keisha erupted into a shout. She hadn't slept a wink, and she was done waiting for her moment. She blurted it out, saying dwarves forged their bond, and she trusted him completely. Even though she told the truth, he stared like he'd lost the plot. Keisha groaned, stuck with no partner, no sleep, and zero progress. Her cheeks puffed with embarrassment, and her anger flared as she stormed away, while the others just stared, stuck in an awkward silence. Right when everything finally calmed down, a thunderous growl ripped through the hall, and then a shadowy creature lunged into view at the end of the tunnel. At her signal, the palm-top rabbits erupted into chaos, shredding the enemy with unstoppable fury. Blood sprayed behind them as they kept charging forward. Then, out of nowhere, something totally strange snapped their attention. Snorting beside the glittering crystals, a horned boar burst into view, and the whole crowd froze, staring hard, curious as heck, and secretly starving. The bunny girls bolted before anyone could blink, and the others screamed to scramble after them, trying to keep up. They eased up, Keisha burst into laughter, and just beyond the way ahead, something huge finally showed itself. Keisha and her team froze in place, eyes bulging as something enormous loomed right in front of them. They craned their necks at a towering, glowing adamantite crystal, and the cave wall pulsed with power so hard it made them shudder. The crystal flared with a voice, and boom, I'm the adamantite king. Keisha straightened up and declared her royal bloodline. Keisha held up her fake sword and demanded adamantite. Then the crystal king snapped it down without a single word. He sighed in defeat. Too much had already been mined, and any more would drain the last of his life force. The group demanded answers. Who snatched the adamantite? The king snapped back. Thieves are hiding deep in the caves. They uncovered rogue alchemists were hoarding ore, and the party stepped up to grab it back, 4 of them going in. Even the adamantite king had fallen, so he slammed the warning home. Don't you dare underestimate the enemy. A crew of thieves got a huge boost from a foreign warrior. And when Miyamoto Tetsuya's name hit the air, people reacted like it was pure gasoline. Everyone gasped, because that name was a dead giveaway. It belonged to a kid they all recognized, and he had strength that could get dangerous fast. Deep in a shadowy cavern, workers trudged between tents, hauling carts and tools while silent guards kept eyes on every move. Starved and scarred, those workers crumple from pure exhaustion, and the group watching finally snaps to the truth. They're trapped, enslaved, and brutalized without mercy. Inside the biggest tent, 2 overseers were dying like it was nothing, while outside, fresh, unfamiliar visitors closed in, unaware of what was about to hit. The moment an overseer steps up, Tetsuya's return hits everyone with shock and pure joy, while Miyamoto's eyes blaze with rage. Miyamoto clamps his weapon in a tight grip and steps up as the crew closes in, ready to smash the truth about Tetsuya's role in slavery. Tetsuya flashes a cruel smirk at Miyamoto, taunting him like an old joke, clearly thrilled that his hated enemy is still alive. She presses for answers on Tsuya, breezes past every question, and admits, without a shred of regret, that he quit training and walked away from the guards. That brutal training flashback showed how that warrior built power, and then quit anyway, walking away while the others kept getting crushed in suffering. He brags about dodging hard work, then slaps his B-rank power to the side and uses it for pure selfish freedom. After getting tossed out of guilds for desertion, Tetsuya snapped into full rogue mode, sealing his descent into disgrace, and planting his feet firmly in villainy. He discovered that beneath the town's peaceful surface, secret underground guilds were running wild, secretly helping criminals dodge justice. To pay for illegal alchemy, the old man shoved him into the shadows, smuggling ore through ruthless black market routes. When they accused him, the thug sneered, strode up like he owned the place, and readied himself to prove, once and for all, that his strength was unstoppable. Out of nowhere, the thug swung a brutal kick, and with a sickening crack, the bald man crumpled and went out cold. The whole group stared in total disbelief as the victim crumpled to the ground. Then even the girls gasped and shook, frozen in stunned silence. He slams a helpless slave, cackling like the crest owns him, and Miyamoto just freezes, horror crashing over him. As Tetsuya mocks the idea of breaking fingers, she trembles on the edge of fury, seething at his cruelty and total apathy. Watching Tetsuya gloat, Miyamoto's disgust turns ice cold. Like this man's greed has suddenly earned torture a price tag that he calls profitable. He declares he runs the world, boasting that others should kneel to his power, but she glares like he's nothing more than a monster. Tetsuya mocks Arabro, steps in and introduces herself with full formality, while his tone hits first, dripping with pure disrespect. Still sneering at Miyamoto's farming skills, Tetsuya mocks him with vicious glee, totally clueless as Arabaro's face tightens in fury. With a smug grin and a flash of confidence, Tetsuya brags to Ouroboros and slides an invite over for coffee, fully expecting instant admiration. With disgust burning in him, Ouroboros whips around to Miyamoto and in a calm voice, asks for permission to erase Tetsuya from existence. Miyamoto notices it and shuts him down with calm restraint, calling out Tatsui's laughable fantasy that sleazy charm still works on grown-ups. Without a second to breathe, Tetsuya yanks her wrist, already sure nobody would ever pick Miyamoto over him. Rage flares inside Ouroboros, her veins throb, and Miyamoto screams in panic, terrified she's about to blow apart violently. As Tetsuya smugly laughs, the others stare in tight silence. Unease creeps higher with every single second. Deeper in the cavern, Sonya hums as she stacks supplies, completely clueless as the danger inches closer, right there where the trouble is about to explode. Tetsuya freezes in disbelief, stunned by Sonya's razor-sharp confidence and effortless grace as she barks the logistics into motion. Tetsuya's heart goes wild with infatuation. Sonya's beauty hits him like a lightning strike, and he forgets everything around him. With a smug grin, Tetsuya flicks his hair back like he owns the moment, already daydreaming about stealing Sonya's heart. Suddenly, every gaze snapped to Tetsuya as Sonya stepped up, face set, clearly unimpressed. With a grin like he owns the world, Tetsuya declares himself a hero and roars about riches and fame, begging anyone who will listen like he's out of time. Sonya snaps back with a punch, smashes his face mid-sentence, and shuts down his cringeworthy offer on the spot. Tetsuya slams headfirst into the wall, body twitching from the impact, while the whole camp freezes and stares in deadly silence. Sonya scrapes her legs clean and spits, "Tetsuya, you scum!" while Miyamoto marches up to him without a single ounce of hesitation. With one brutal arm, Ouroboros lifts him and snaps a warning. Mocking her master isn't just disrespectful, it brings instant consequences. Before anyone can stop her, she drops a brutal punch, big, fierce, and pure Miyamoto style, only to realize she's basically copying Sonya's violent brand of justice. Blood slides down Tatsuya's face as Ouroboros stares him down, ripping open his fake hero act with cold, merciless truth. Blow after blow hits its mark, and she snaps that Tatsuya's raw strength means nothing if respect and honor aren't there. Blood explodes across the scene as Ouroboros lands another brutal hit, dead calm, and asks if he already wrote his will. She spits that he should just fall flat as he begs, then she smashes him again and again, raw fury fueled by righteous loyalty. Miyamoto snaps his arm up to cover the kid's eyes, as Tetsuya's bruised face twists under Ouroboros' non-stop brutal beatdown. No hesitation, she slams her fist down hard, unleashing raw, unfiltered wrath for loyalty. Tetsuya's shattered body gets slammed into the cavern wall, and the rock splits open in jagged cracks that look like shame itself. She tugs Ouroboros back with a soft command, and reminds herself that this time, mercy can land as the cleanest win. Sonya and Miyamoto lock in their plan, tie Tetsuya up, and hand him over because that's the only move that makes sense. Bloodied and broken, he crawls forward with defiance blazing in his chest, spitting vengeance in hate-soaked words that still make the room tremble. Just as he's about to rise again, a brutal hit slams into him and knocks the breath out of him, right there in front of everyone. Miyamoto slams his foot down with a final, ice-cold stomp, crushing the last flicker of Tetsuya's crawling resistance. The whole group stares at Tatsuya's twisted condition, but he just lets out a quiet Ouroboros smirk, and they don't flinch at all. Sonya rallies her bunny warriors with a fierce signal, and right as Miyamoto senses trouble brewing, it's clear the response is going to be brutal. Sonya wastes no time. She barks for total elimination, and her squad roars, while Miyamoto quietly trembles at what's about to hit next. Miyamoto shrugged off the warnings, burst ahead, and slammed right into a savage trap that smashed his skull to pieces in an instant. Rage from the betrayal lit the twins up as they lunged forward, blades flashing, flesh giving way, and screams tearing through the air while blood poured out. Right there, their ally shook with disgust, while the others just smirked, completely unbothered as the violent spectacle tore across the scene. Miyamoto's mutilated body hit the ground, and the bunny girls swarmed in, linking up to forge a magic circle before unleashing the final blow. His body convulsed as sharp roots burst up from beneath him, locking his fate into a cruel, irreversible change. Flames burst over his body, scorching through muscle and bone as he screamed one last time. Minutes drag by, then from the charred corpse, the hero starts twitching as if he somehow refuses to die. He didn't even pause. He tossed a potion beside the scorched ruins and hurried off, leaving behind one final, quiet set of instructions. As they regrouped, they seized a few suspicious people. Sure, they'd been tied to illegal schemes connected to those palm-top rabbit beings. Keisha strode forward with steel in her eyes, and with zero doubt, she nailed the exact location they'd been hunting. Inside the crate, pure adamantite shimmered like gold. Rare, brutally useful stuff that craftsmen used to forge weapons, tools, and defenses. Swiftly, the construction crews surged into action. Dozens of workers hoisted wooden frames into place, while Keisha barked orders with silent, unshakable focus. The supplies flew in and the plans snapped into place fast, turning raw ideas into a rock-solid home you could recognize. Gratitude hung in the air, because for so many this new place meant real freedom, real comfort, and privacy they'd been waiting years for. They added a real kitchen, carved out personal rooms, and laid out plans for even bigger expansions down the road. With magic blazing, the elf ripped open the bath area and carved out space for water and indoor plumbing. They tore into a shrine renovation, and in return the priest handed out discounted blessings to help bankroll the next round of construction. Tatsuya steeled himself for loneliness, while everyone else scrambled to set up the rooms, starting with sleeping spots so they could live comfortably right away. The girls demanded reinforced beds, and their smug smiles plus not-so-subtle hints left Tatsuya completely rattled, standing there speechless with no idea what to say. Teasing kept rolling, they bragged and joked about the same sleeping habits, and Tatsuya's unease just kept swelling until it was plain to see. Tatsuya couldn't believe the logic. These guys swore privacy was respected, yet they still insisted on sharing one bed in the same room. Confusion spread through their faces. None of them had even thought to sleep in their own rooms. After a long day of sleep and construction work, everything neared the finish line, and the whole crew finally collapsed outside, wiped out, but grinning from a job well done. Every girl's diet swung wildly, hunger kept roaring, and their total different tastes turned meal planning into a non-stop headache. Tetsuya clapped with full confidence, then snapped his plan into place, one brilliant idea that birthed a stew capable of satisfying every appetite. Steam rolled off a thick stew packed with veggies, mushrooms, and wild boar as it started simmering toward pure perfection. The second that bite hit, every single person snapped awake in pure astonishment. Flavors detonated on their tongues, and compliments spilled out on the spot. Tatsuya broke down where every ingredient came from, and that boar absolutely blew minds, especially for anyone who remembered stalking it back then. He praised the rich sweetness and laughed, saying he could sell this recipe back in Japan. Before long, the pot was wiped clean. Tatsuya realized way too late that their hunger was unstoppable and that the stew was insanely good. After they polished off the stew, they dove straight into rice soup, tossing the leftover broth and all those remaining ingredients right in. The pot simmered and bubbled like it meant business, and every second the rice gulped up those rich flavors while warm steam rolled through the whole cooking space. The excitement hit like lightning. When the soup blew past their expectations and tasted way deeper than they thought, the girls erupted in cheers. Even people who'd never tried rice soup before lit up with huge approval, praising its cozy, warm flavor like it was instant comfort. Tetsuya ate in quiet, steady bites, and then, like a wave hitting shore, a soft smile finally broke across his face as pure satisfaction took him whole. Cornelia burst in out of nowhere during dinner, and Tatsuya nearly choked mid-bite just from the shock. The night wrapped up in calm bliss. Everyone stuffed their faces, but Cornelia refused to let it go, still craving curry. Later that night, their shared bedroom turned electric. Beneath the crush of covers, pounding hearts couldn't calm down. Katasha was drowning in stress and irritation, so she shoved herself under the blankets, trying to escape the non-stop noise driving her insane. After crushing his morning work, Tetsuya finally stretched his aching muscles. Then Katasha slid up out of nowhere and shoved rice balls into his hands without a word. Under the bright morning sun, Tetsuya stretched with exhaustion still clinging to him. Then Katasha quietly slid over freshly made rice. Katasha spotted the drained look on his face, and Tetsuya's eyes screamed pure exhaustion, yet he still flashed a grateful smile for her kindness. They sat close in silence, and he praised the rice balls like crazy, totally stunned that Katasha's cooking effort and skill were this good. Katasha's cheeks flamed as she hesitated, and then she finally confessed she'd overheard every single thing from the room right next to his. Right when her nerve finally cracked and she blurted her confession, panic slammed into her, and she sprinted away before she could finish telling the truth about how she felt. Tetsuya watched Katsuya bolt away, and a soft smile tugged at his lips as he quietly realized just how far she'd already grown. That quiet talk hit him hard. This village could bring peace, but this time he kept his feet planted and didn't drift. Once the rice was gone, he had to admit it. She was still way too young to chase after. That night, the crew crammed into the half-finished house, throwing drinks back and laughing like they had nothing to fear. Exhaustion finally crushed everyone. Bottles were strewn everywhere, and the whole crowd drifted off into peaceful dozing right in the middle of the celebration. Tatsuya stumbled back to his room, utterly worn out, replaying everyone's drinking habits, and panicking over what all that spending was going to cost. Expecting a calm night, he crawled into bed and finally exhaled, so thankful for that rare stretch of sleep without a single interruption. Katasha burst up from under the covers, cheeks burning and totally exposed, catching him so off guard he didn't even know what to do. The guard and everyone around him froze in dead silence, tension snapping tight in the air, and Tatsuya's heart was pounding like crazy as everything finally clicked. Gently, he nudged her to go, tender with her heart but firm enough to make his boundary crystal clear. Katsuya sat there shaking, clutching her tears, terrified her feelings might be welcomed, or shut down the second she spoke. Overwhelmed, she blurted, "Is it really so wrong that I want love and someone to finally see me?" Tetsuya panicked and babbled out the rules, terrified of how it would look, whether it was ethical, and how badly he might crush her fragile feelings. Misunderstandings piled up fast. Katasha decided the rejection was all about her looks, not her growth, and she pushed back hard to prove she wasn't what they thought. She unleashed a secret power that reshaped her body, praying it would finally make him see her differently. That dwarf girl leaned in and bragged about her blacksmith bloodline, then blasted magic into her body to turn her naturally weaker frame into something built to take a beating. With a fresh surge of enchantment backing her up, she lifted her chin and proudly showed off a young, battle-ready body that felt unstoppable. He swallowed his nerves and laid out strict moral lines, stressing that age, not appearances, decides who counts as proper company. She blurted her age out loud, all confidence and curiosity, and it instantly made him tense, trapped in that breathless wait for the real answer. With lightning snapping in the air, she answered loud and steady, 112, and it left him completely stunned. She blushed and added up 100 plus 12, praying he would finally get that she's an adult. He soothed her with calm confidence, honoring her maturity and melting her discomfort with steady, heartfelt affection. Tears burned in her eyes as she pressed him on why he hesitated, terrified he'd shut her down even though she'd spoken the truth. After all that, he finally blurted out his feelings, crushing every doubt, and swore her presence was the one thing he'd been craving all along. That night, she leaned into his teasing nickname, and right there, their bond snapped into something deeper than either of them expected. Taisha proudly revealed her brand-new bedroom, and the whole group went wide-eyed at how fast she pulled off something so unexpected. He stared in awe at the tidy room, then softly stroked Tashia's head, lavishing praise on the real effort she'd put in. Caught off guard by his affection, Keisha shoved away her feelings, trembling hard as she fought to cover the blush creeping up her cheeks. Even though she was embarrassed, she admitted under his hand that she secretly loved it, biting back a grin. While the others hashed out future tasks, private rooms and baths in the background, the kitchens started getting busy, like real work had finally kicked in. Up top, their base kept growing. Fields, sheds, and workshops spread across the freshly cleared land and filled it up fast. They dug a deep well, while their plans for a water canal kept racing toward the riverbank. Once Keisha scored some metal, she lit up with the idea of building a furnace so they wouldn't have to trek back and forth forever. Even though he hesitated, he leaned in and listened hard as she laid out every tool they'd need once they hit the job site. Seeing the truth land, he pushed the furnace into their plans, eyes locked on the future, burning with fresh resolve. Keisha burst out that he was her husband, and her fearless, fiery declaration sent everyone into a full-blown fluster. Out of nowhere, she crushed him in a tight hug and blurted out her feelings, choking back tears that flooded her eyes. Construction kicked back up as fresh roommates moved in, and each girl instantly formed a deep, fast bond with him. Soon the base was brimming with affection, and even elf girls kept showing up on schedule, always slipping in under flimsy excuses. Even with his body screaming from non-stop pressure, he still cracked a faint smile, caught between his paradise saving me or ruining me. Even with everything falling apart, he threw himself into this new life, feeling real warmth around him that he never saw coming. Hidden in the bushes, Tatsuya watched her in the vineyard, mesmerized by her hardworking charm, unable to look away. She blushed and spun under his compliment, and somehow her outfit got everyone staring, plus a few cheeky digs about the construction site vibe. In the shadowy grapevines, they hashed out a plan, selling alcohol to keep their booming settlement afloat, even as money ran thin fast. Even with supplies running low and repairs costing a fortune, he still believed their teamwork would forge back their fortune. The party costs hit him like a wrecking ball. Mountains of booze had smashed their budget to pieces, way past anything he could have imagined. Even he had to admit it. Those imported canned highballs were absolutely flying with the village crowd. As he stared into the future, he mapped out rice fields. Only this time, the long haul of farming was going to demand serious investment once the wine and sake took root. With sheer skill, he dialed Grape's sweetness to perfection, and she couldn't help but gush over his talent with playful, teasing admiration. For Cassia and the lighter drinkers, juice-style wines became the easy, friendly way to sip without going full heavy alcohol. To make some steady cash, he opened a small shop, hoping it would finally free him from living paycheck to paycheck. At dinner, Curry lit up the table with talk about drink pairings, and Cornelia couldn't hold back. She proudly proclaimed, "I'm a wine lover." He mulled over wheat and pork cutlet combos, then realized they'd need to toss in more breadcrumbs soon. Fresh from the fields, Tatsuya strode back to Smiles. Then his heart dropped when he realized the little ones were gone. Turns out Maria dragged them out hunting, and the house went weirdly quiet, peaceful in a way that didn't feel normal at all. She brought up a blunt truth. More prey meant more money if they could finally manage their finances right. Emotion slammed into him, and he burst into sobs, moved by her effort and their teamwork as he lifted the young one. Her teasing snapped into a blazing accusation. She called him lazy, while the little ones kept working their tails off outside. With a dramatic pout, she demanded head pats, because he knew if he refused, it would explode on him emotionally and hit his chances at romance too. Still holding back his anger, he ruffled her hair, and her whole mood lit up right away, even though he knew it wouldn't last. Arisa barged in out of nowhere, blowing up the group's calm. She swore she wasn't here to pick up anything today. Instead, she handed over a bundle of tools that powered the build of their planned shop. Tatsuya thanked her on the spot, totally blown away that Risa was a support-type adventurer, just not the one meant to fight up close. She straight-up confessed that dodging fights was her whole game, because staying alive mattered more than showing off through reckless power plays. Tatsuya stared her down, doubting her courage, and when he brought up her stand against the elves, Arisa stumbled, unable to find the right words. Arisa smirked with total confidence, daring him to admit it, because she claimed he already knew everything about her, even the stuff nobody else had ever figured out. She offered to swing by and deliver the tools, then grilled him about whether he was free all week. Without warning, she slammed into him in a tight embrace, and in that moment she confirmed she'd be free again tomorrow too. Arisa blurted out it was a date and dragged him into town with pure excitement, so sudden it left him totally stunned. Even with him totally baffled, she pushed back and insisted she needed to apologize the right way for tricking him back then. He nodded and agreed, but Sonia slammed the door on the invite, claiming she was buried in chores. Stammering under that question, Sonia shot off excuse after excuse, but everyone could tell she didn't have real work plans at all. He started hunting for another move, maybe even Ouroboros, but every single person he asked acted like they were way too busy to talk. Right as they were about to head out, Arisa teased him, because he'd pushed back on her company way too hard. With pure, unstoppable energy, Arisa dragged him along and swore their adventure would be unforgettable. Loud, wild, and full of life. They burst into a bustling market. Arisa strode ahead with total confidence, and Tatsuya hung back, eyes locked on every corner of the crowd, soaking it all in. Their date went full mission mode. Tool shopping, fruit browsing, and Arisa even shocked them with a surprise outfit change. Arisa spotted a rare fruit, forked out her silver to buy it, and shoved it into Tatsuya's hands, demanding he take the first bite. He sniffed the fruit, took one bite, and nearly froze. He couldn't believe how sweet and juicy it was. Even as Arisa savored every bite, a weird unease crept in, like the flavor was flawless, but something in the moment felt wrong. Those farm tomatoes hit the market and blew everyone away with flavor so rich that even the regular vegetables couldn't hold a candle anymore. Once he felt his power click into place, he started daydreaming about growing monster melons and watermelons, and even snacks so sweet they'd make candy jealous. He hauled his harvest to the villagers and fine-tuned every bite, nailing the flavors so perfectly it felt like each person's taste was made just for them. Even the doubters got blown away by his skills, but he stayed humble, cracking nervous laughs whenever someone praised him as humanity's strongest. He slipped back home in silence, unnoticed by everyone, but the moment he arrived, the life he'd loved, surrounded by beautiful companions, turned upside down. She brushed off his doubts, swearing that it wasn't strength that made people trust him, it was his kindness. Staring back at her past blunders, she confessed that anyone else would have punished her, yet he shocked her by letting her off with unexpected mercy. He always put everyone else first, his farming plans, his time, even his own life, because every single choice was built to serve the village before he ever thought of himself. Even with all that freedom to chase his own wants, he stayed solid and real, and she couldn't help but admire that calm, unshakable resolve. Coming from another world twisted him into something else, and when she smiled, she acted like she knew everyone saw the exact same thing. When he heard her honest answer, a small smile cracked across his face, shocked that someone could actually look at him and see real value. When she eyed him with suspicion, panic hit him. His awkward, crushing silence somehow screamed even louder. Under the moonlight, she finally clocked it. He'd planned this whole outing on purpose, and he never once admitted it. Right there on the bench, side by side, she leaned in close and whispered it was finally their moment. She smirked and dangled the promise of more, watching to see if he'd back off, or take her offer without hesitation. With a fierce, razor-sharp stare, he finally spilled everything. No pause, no fear. His trembling voice couldn't hide how badly he meant it. Easy, she chuckled softly, and watching his dramatic emotional spirals hit the same old nerve. Because every time he overreacted like that, the tension in the air snapped. That night their bond burned hotter and deeper. He didn't pry into her secrets, he just wrapped himself in the trust they were building together. When they finally made it back home, the world went dead quiet. No footsteps, no voices, no laughter in the air at all. Right when he was about to step out again, someone snapped his name, shattering the silence in the room. Everyone was gone, and he just stood there, frozen, staring as the door slammed shut out of nowhere, leaving him utterly baffled. A younger girl shoulder-bumped past her with icy attitude, firing back zero real answers, just sharp, cryptic little dismissals. Frustration burned hot as he sat alone and fumed. No one cared enough to include him, not even a tiny bit. He dozed off with a sulk, then finally woke up. Night had already blanketed the whole house. Outside, a frantic voice snapped his attention. He jerked down off the spot, just to catch every word she was urgently shouting. Out of nowhere, a shout ripped through the hallway. She bolted, and though he was left dazed, he couldn't stop himself from chasing after her. He followed her to a half-built structure. Raw wood everywhere, and that heavy silence gave him zero answers about what she was up to. Confetti exploded into the air, and the crowd roared like a stadium wave. Then a secret group started chanting his name in perfect unison. Happy birthday. She leaned in with playful mischief, dropping the news like a bomb. And his eyes went huge, caught in a wild mix of shock and wait, no way. Quietly, he drifted back to that old conversation, the day he'd once brought up, and realized they'd still remembered it even after he'd forgotten. He burst into tears, crushed by love, and suddenly their secretive ways all clicked, joyful and perfect. Everyone pitched in, decorations hung up, food filled the tables, laughter rolled out. Every little detail backed it up with quiet acts of care and pure loyalty. He froze in front of the door, barely keeping the tears from spilling, whispering, "Thank you," with lips that wouldn't stop trembling. Right before the celebration even kicked off, they teased a storm of surprises. Gifts, non-stop laughter, and a night so sleepless it felt unreal. The whole vibe flipped bold and bright, wrapped in flashy ribbons. Then they presented themselves as his gift with exaggerated, playful flair. She stood there with them, holding her breath. This one question hung in the air like a dare, pushing him to make the choice. He snapped back instantly, his feelings raw and blazing, yet his conviction to take their gift never wavered. Night melted into memory, and the celebration crashed in, wild, close, and unforgettable, so much so that his birthday became a local legend. Elsewhere, a lone girl bolted through the moonlight, breath shredded, chasing something that wouldn't stop, because whatever it was, it couldn't wait. The girls skip off laughing, leaving Tatsuya to run the farm and keep the household under control. Even with all that strength, she admitted the mission could get deadly fast. Coming back alive was anything but certain. At the newly rebuilt homestead, a sealed letter slid in, its wax stamped with Cornelia's personal emblem. Cornelia sent a respectful message, practically begging them to rein in their magical beast hunts before they stirred up chaos. He finally realized that their beast hunting wasn't just hunting beasts. It was quietly wrecking Cornelia's economy, and that could shake her income and even her hard-won territorial stability. That girl's relentless hunting started tearing ecosystems apart, and everyone knew they had to rein things in fast, or the damage would only get worse. Tatsuya kicked off a tiny expedition to claw back what they'd lost in food supplies and trading materials. There was a dungeon right by their home that bragged about treasure, yet it was feared for slaughtering adventurers by the dozens. Even with the danger looming, Maria got assigned to lead the mission and steer the rabbit tribe to safety. With tears on her face and grit in her bones, Maria begged for special treatment if she made it through the deadly journey ahead. The group charged ahead with full confidence, and Tatsuya steadied Maria's nerves, certain their strength could power through whatever danger came next. Right before he left, two elves rushed up to Tatsuya to warn him about problems wrecking the drink export business. Hauling wine barrels through monster-riddled forest trails was brutal, and it was so dangerous that regular trips had to be stopped. Even with options on the table, Tatsuya couldn't lean on magic or beasts to fix logistics without wrecking the farming schedule. Hit with a pile of problems, Tatsuya didn't waste time. He called a meeting and pushed to get everyone's input ASAP. Right when morning cracked open, rabbit girls came charging through the entrance, sparking the intruder alert system instantly. They spotted an injured girl nearby, and Tatsuya shot into action fast, even half awake, his mind still foggy and scrambled. Realizing it wasn't a beast, Tatsuya told Ouroboros to investigate, while Cassio stayed put behind. Tatsuya tiptoed out of the house, terrified this situation might spiral into yet another disaster. Outside, they stumbled on a wounded schoolgirl. Her breaths were barely there, but somehow life still clung to her. Tatsuya leaned in fast, stunned by the injured girl's face. She lay unconscious right there, barely breathing. He demanded that Ouroboros heal her, and when he spotted a Mayuba classmate from Earth's summoning, it all clicked for him. While she slept, he stared into the dark and remembered how Mayu, only Mayu, never once mocked his weird, unrankable skills. Even after the healing, Mayu still wouldn't wake up. Those wounds screamed that she'd survived something savage out in the darkest part of the forest. When our guys jumped in, they started undressing Mayu, thinking a warm bath would speed up her recovery and bring her strength roaring back. Mayu's torn clothes split open to reveal fresh wounds, and the doctors swore the robotos. Treatment demanded a full exam and deep cleansing. Ouroboros totally misread the moment like it was love at first sight, mistaking Tatsuya's orders for a warm, personal invitation. When they checked her, they found a forest of shallow cuts, marks that only a skilled swordsman could have carved. As we treated Mayu, the abortos suddenly snapped into this creepy, over-the-top excitement. Eyes locked on the blood, and their gaze stuck to every visible injury. Right after she humiliated herself in front of Tatsu, she got caught in the spotlight and blurted out an apology for her behavior. Tatsuya shut down Ouroboros' offer, thrown off by her bold push and scrambling to figure out what the heck he was supposed to say back. Ouroboros told him these chances never come twice, taunting him as he flinched and turned away in pure discomfort. Trying to keep himself steady, Tatsuya let out a shaky joke, but Mayu's condition still haunted him to the core. As he bandaged her up, he stared into the void and wondered, what in the world happened after that group ditched him? He handed Ouroboros and Katashia the job of guarding Mayu until she woke up safely. The house stayed stone silent. Then the battered warriors came charging back in from their expedition, bruised but blazing with pride. Triumph hit as they uncovered a legendary sword, while Maria barely stayed awake, drained to nothing from sheer exhaustion. The team lurched through the finish line. One guy was yelling in pure triumph, while the rest could barely keep their feet after that brutal ordeal. Maria demanded everyone's attention, her trauma crashing over her like a wave, and the others agreed. This mission had beaten them down both body and mind. Tatsuya celebrated their effort, but the swordsfinder blasted out a warning. "Don't you dare forget your prize," she said. Tatsuya leaned in and demanded to know if the sword was the real deal. Everyone nodded and swore it was pulled straight from the caves. When they came back, Tatsuya finally exhaled and swore he'd jump into the next adventure with them, right by their side. Later, Tatsuya headed to the Shrine of Abundance and sized up the treasure haul's true worth. He flipped out some coins and scanned the wrapped bundle, already wondering what kind of haul it would spit out. And the appraisal just blew everyone away. It landed at an eye-popping sum of over 11 million yen. Again, it stunned everyone in the room. Rare coins appraised, and now Tatsuya had to figure out what to do with the crown and the rest of the treasures. The team huddled over their options, because choosing to sell through Cornelia or Arisa would mean getting hit with brutal fees. Sonya shut out everyone's cries and hurled priceless artifacts into the shrine slot on the spot. No hesitation, no permission. The shrine gulped everything down at lightning speed, and it left Tatsuya and the others reeling from the shock of its sudden, brutal suction. When the machine updated the treasure values on the spot, Tatsuya's eyes went wide. Turns out the shrine gobbled up items nonstop, with zero limits. He froze in place, crushed by hard economic fears, and suddenly understood that the treasure's volume could throw everything into chaos. Even after everything's gone, one prize still haunts the spoils. An old legendary sword, priceless, symbolic, and way too dangerous to just pawn off. Before he even got the chance to move, Seikiana snapped and hurled the sacred sword straight at the offering box. Panicked, he surged forward and tried to yank the sword back before the shrine's pull swallowed it whole. He clamped his grip tight and fought the suction with everything he had, refusing to let the legendary hero's sword be dragged away. He yanked and strained against the pole, fighting tooth and nail to keep the legendary sword from crashing down into abundance. The sword practically taunts him, either follow its call or give up everything without fighting back. Defeated, he crumbled to his knees and let go. The sword slipped from his grip and dropped, accepted by the shrine like an offering. The price counter shot past 1 million yen, and that's when the truth finally hit. This sword was worth an insane fortune. The whole group erupted in cheers, because that sacrifice paid off big time. Now this return pushed them one step closer to the goal. Maria twirls in pure joy while the others stare, thinking, can you really turn money into gold? The altar spits out the conversion, and Maria stares at it in shock, realizing that the fortune is more than enough to carry her through life's survival needs. He tears through the numbers, flipping page after page as the whole group holds their breath, waiting for his next move. With absolute certainty blazing in his eyes, he declares they finally have the money for that long-desired purchase. The girls huddled together, eyes wide and buzzing, desperate to figure out what mysterious new item their master had just snatched up this time. Without a second thought, they tore outside together, buzzing with excitement, and tangled up in confusion about whatever surprise was waiting. A thunderous engine screamed as a bizarre metallic beast barreled toward them, blasting the whole scene with its insane speed. The car screeched to a brutal stop, and the girls just froze, caught between fear and cheering. With dramatic swagger, the master stepped out and proudly unveiled his truck, proof that Japanese manufacturing runs on pure excellence. Curious and totally stumped, the girls crowded around him as he revealed the mysterious mini-truck contraption. While they kept guessing ancient magic, he snapped the truth into place. Electricity powered it all, not some heavenly energy source. Solar power alone wouldn't cut it, so he slipped out a secret tank stacked with emergency gasoline reserves too. Divine magic sealed the fuel tight, shielding it from mishandling and any magical interference that could have sparked disaster across town. With awkward charm, he dangled free repairs like bait, desperately trying to win back readers and allies as his approval slid. After he checked the remaining balance, Tetsuya snapped. Turns out that mini-truck purchase had drained every last coin. Even with his spirits crushed, he snapped into action and instantly laid out a new plan, using the truck to haul the farm goods. First, he gathered everyone and ordered them to drill the driving basics, then stepped forward as their teacher himself. On that very first lesson, someone accidentally hit the engine and boom, it suddenly roared into life, shaking everyone and leaving them stunned. Tetsuya stayed cool as he coached her through every gear shift and clutch move, kicking off a wild driving practice that felt chaotic, but still pushed with pure determination. No matter how hard she tried, the truck finally died and rolled to a stop. Tetsuya snapped in, and while he drilled her on clutch control, panic clawed at her chest. Her excitement detonated into pure chaos as the truck filled with repeated stall crashes, metal jolting over and over. Another girl slid into the driver's seat, took control with total calm, and carved through the nearby force with steady precision. Now you've got to wonder how it all works, right? The youngest girl was itching to tear that truck apart, but she didn't know how to put it back together. Ouroboros took her turn, and the others stared in jittery silence, because her grim face promised trouble on the road. She flat out refused to crank up the speed, choosing solid footing and clean control over what Tetsuya ordered, changing gears. Maria slammed the accelerator, reckless and fearless, daring everyone to keep up as she shoved the truck to the edge. She bulldozed past the rough terrain, blasting down the forest trail like a streak of lightning, and everyone behind her started panicking, begging for mercy. Their chaotic arrival blindsided a local girl. She didn't even flinch at the truck, and she straight up demanded courage with a fire in her eyes. With a cocky smirk, she bragged that she'd already been to Japan, and then waved off the truck as totally underwhelming. She spilled surreal memories, airplanes roaring, tanks rolling, and military bases looming, leaving everyone totally speechless and completely lost. Her brain reached all the way into nuclear physics, and it left everyone with questions they were too scared to even say out loud. Once the elves jumped into driver training, the whole crew finally split the transport jobs for good. Excitement snapped into overdrive the moment she lit up about the group's curry lunch announcement. One girl burst into motion with fearless swagger, claiming she was speed itself as everyone else braced for the hit. Just as lunchtime burst the tension, Tetsuya just stood there, completely stunned by her ridiculously over-the-top driving declaration. Meanwhile, Masashi Miyamoto, bleeding and battered, scrambled through the forest, wheezing out the wild chaos of his past. He burst out of execution and tore through the world, hunting the comrades he'd ditched back during that brutal hero training. Training on pure vengeance, Masashi snarled threats under his breath as he dragged himself forward, totally clueless about what was closing in nearby. Suddenly, the truck tore through the forest trail, snapping branches left and right and blasting a cloud of startled birds into the air. Maria panicked when she mistook the gas for the brakes, and Masashi went berserk, screaming at the impossible sight. No time for explanations. One violent crash of the truck slammed straight into Masashi, and chaos erupted instantly. Even with injuries that should have ended him, Masashi somehow survived, and he already knew that back in Japan this would have killed him. As the truck careened away, Masashi crumpled there, bleeding, bruised, and somehow thankful for every brutal second of that training. Elsewhere, Tetsuya tried to tutor with math, but a blushing student completely misread what he meant, and it turned into a hilarious disaster. Tetsuya threw in the towel on teaching the moment he realized the blushing maid wasn't even thinking about the lesson. Her mind was totally somewhere else. After he checked everyone's assignments, he realized their math skills were shockingly weak across the board. Even with solid training, they all choked when the numbers hit double digits. Some couldn't manage basic finger counting either. While he crunched the numbers, Tetsuya caught it. Then Arisa turned scarlet again, totally sure he'd meant something else with his academic plans. Right before he could patch the accounts, shocking news hit. Someone he never expected had just come back to consciousness. My awakened stumbled, completely thrown off, as a swarm of curious allies rushed in and peppered her with relentless questions. Tetsuya warmly pulled her back, but Mayu struggled to wrap her head around how he was even standing in this world. She could barely finish the thought. She stared at the weird crowd swirl, feeling totally thrown off by the unfamiliar scene. Yet somehow it still looked perfectly, eerily organized. Recognition slams into ranked elites and legendary legends, because now they're grinding as housemaids under Tetsuya's laid-back command. To make it even wilder, Mayu spotted dwarves and elves living in peace side by side, even though they'd once been brutal enemies. Enemy Mayu's stomach rumbled the moment Jin slid the food to her. She looked pale as a ghost, barely able to breathe, and that terrified silence screamed louder than hunger. Inside the mansion, Mayu sat trembling in the middle of armored maids, their silent presence pressing down with cold, intimidating control. Jin leaned in and asked Mayu what she wanted to eat, and right away he caught the confusion hanging in the air all around them. As Mayu stalled, everyone else demanded meat, but Jin wouldn't back down. She demanded something warm and easy to digest be served. When he heard her whisper his name so softly, Jin's smile flared, and for the first time in a while, that calm, normal feeling came rushing back. Mayu's voice came out barely above a whisper as she confessed she'd been craving ginger pork for years, and the memory of that dish hit her so hard she nearly flinched. Jin leaned in and reassured her. He wasn't offended at all, he was just stunned that she'd ask something so wildly nostalgic. With a grin, Jin swore he'd cook it up, using boar meat he'd snag from the nearby devil-type creatures. As Mayu geared up, it hit her. Those helpers weren't just random fighters, they were elite hunters, trained to take down a rank monster. She went completely still, unable to speak, as he casually yanked out a bottle of ginger like it was the most normal thing in the world. Mayu figured out his power could haul modern goods straight from Japan, and that kind of value could reshape this whole world. He whipped up ginger boar and rice porridge, tossing in devil boar meat and packing it with Japanese-style seasonings. One glance at the dish, and Mayu's mind snapped back to Jin's past, how he'd always been shockingly resourceful, unstoppable, and way more capable than anyone realized. Tears welled up in her eyes as she stared at the meal, overwhelmed, hunger roaring inside her and that familiar taste hitting her like a wave she couldn't ignore. She stared in disbelief. There was porridge in the mix too. He quickly apologized, saying he hadn't added the cabbage just yet. After Jin passed her the dish, he went right back to the stove and left Mayu stuck handling it all by herself. While Jin clocked back into work, Mayu tore through her meal, desperately trying to slow down between bites. Tears streamed down her cheeks as memories burned hot, and hunger hit her all at once. Seeing her reaction, Jin's heart slammed in his chest. He couldn't tell if the food was soothing her or cutting deeper. Mayu finally spilled the whole truth. Everything she'd been eating so far tasted downright awful. And that moment right there was the first time something actually hit right. She tore into the food with zero restraint, praising every bite, while Jin watched her from the side with a calm, satisfied smile. After it was over, she sank into silence, guilt crashing down as she finally apologized for what she'd done before. With him staring her down, she finally broke, admitting she'd ditched him when he needed her most. Jin flashed a gentle smile and waved it off like it was nothing, because deep down, he already knew she'd been cornered into that brutal choice. He looked straight at her pain and promised her this. Her struggles had probably been worse than his. Mayu stood there in silence, stunned by his calm maturity, and guilt crushed her, like she didn't deserve a single bit of his forgiveness. With a room full of happy people surrounding him, Dean burst into laughter while Mayu realized he'd only ever answered her with pure kindness. Swearing she'd repay him, Mayu kept her vow locked in her heart. She'd back him no matter what came at them. When they asked how she was holding up, she dropped the truth. She'd been hiding her class as a high-expectation sage among the summoned heroes. She broke down how brutal training, non-stop violence, and lawless chaos carved up the world she'd survived. Even when others got stuck in the same fight, Mayu's real downfall was brutal. She simply couldn't bring herself to kill the hostile monsters. She admitted it plain and simple. She wasn't brave at all, just terrified, drowning in guilt and terrified she'd doom everyone else. Her mind kept wandering into the monsters' lives, seeing their families, picturing their pain, so every step she took stalled, right on the edge of hesitation. When everyone else bylayed, the brutal training got even worse, and Mayu became the one they picked for punishment. Her failure to wipe out those monsters didn't just doom her. It dragged innocent companions into endless torture, turning her mistake into shared suffering. Then her comrades pinned every mistake on her, until one day she dared to cross that rope bridge all alone. During the hunting mission, Mayu got shoved and plummeted headfirst into a ravine choking with rubble and debris. Broken and left for dead, she stayed unconscious until strangers found her and rushed her away. Villagers from nearby discovered her, tended to her wounds, and gave her a safe place to recover. She welcomed everyone with a bright smile, living easy in her quiet village, far from brutal camps and any touch of violence. Even though she'd been living her calm life in the village, that fragile peace shattered way sooner than she ever dared to hope. Armed bandits tore into the village, and Mayu got yanked straight back into her worst nightmare, frozen in pure terror. She fought back with everything she had, but one brutal, unstoppable enemy crushed her resistance in seconds. Barely breathing through the chaos, she sprinted past injuries and gunfire until she finally slammed into Jin's residence for safety. She swallowed her fear, thanked them softly, and then tore the truth open. The village was gone, and the people inside were probably all dead. Mayu stood before the relics of her past, gripping that pain in her chest as she swore to honor every fallen villager. She threw on her worn old robe and declared she was leaving, while Jin kicked on his rare premonition skill, and Matsuya's adventurer card flashed, and his forewarning skill lit up, firing a warning as unseen danger closed in. Even with the warning signs screaming at her, Mayu grinned like she meant it. Fear and self-doubt finally slipped out of her grip. Jin panicked as the pull grew stronger, pleading with him to stay, just one more night. Tatsuya said it, and the choice was final, no way out, so he lined everyone up and told them they'd leave tomorrow. The team answered in a weird split. Some chased justice like it was a lifeline, while others fixated on vegetables and punishment with unsettling intensity. Tatsuya watched the curry bubble away, grinning as coffee's deep flavor swirled with garlic and thick, hearty vegetables. Even after his promise, Tatsuya stayed the night, guilt clawing at him as he kept spiraling over whether the village would be safe. Morning hit, curry steamed on the table, and complaints erupted. But the clock didn't care, so everyone had to bolt right after they ate. Even with a bright smile hanging on, Tetsuya blinked hard to hold back tears, feeling grateful and aching at the thought of leaving the village. Just then, unexpected guests crashed in, and Lord Bakery's scent taunted them, while the others came in loud with nothing but hunger and nerve. Tetsu. Sua's prediction hit dead on. More girls poured in, one grabbing the mic to demand curry, while the rest swept after Cornelia's lead. Kneeling with flawless grace, Cornelia's attendants bowed low and greeted her with real respect, making it clear she was more than just some visitor. Shocked by how easily everyone followed, May realized that the little girl wasn't helpless at all. She was casually bossing warriors like it was nothing. The truth hit Cornelia like a gut punch, and even though she looked young, she was a demon lord with real, terrifying power. Mayu's knees buckled from pure shock, and she clung to Tatsuya's arms as his bizarre companions kept sparking new questions that wouldn't let up. Overcurried, they burst into laughter over the thought of fainting, and somehow bonded on the spot through sweet, nostalgic memories from those Japan school lectures. Tatsuya let out a quiet breath and soaked in the rare chance to finally talk with someone who truly understood his old world. Cornelia spotted something weird in the curry, and that snapped Tetsuya into praising Mayu's cooking like he'd just tasted proof. Shocked by the praise, Mayu admitted she had no choice. She learned everything out of pure necessity after losing her mother so early. Mayu panicked, blushing and overwhelmed, as everyone erupted in loud reactions to her totally unexpected culinary genius, and Cornelia's moment just kept growing. Julia wasted no time and crowned Mayu as her official minister of curry, just in case Tetsuya vanished. The fox-eared girl dug into her meal, shocked to see Mayu sitting right there in Tetsuya's weird little crew. As Tatsuya laid out Mayu's role, Cornelia froze mid-breath, then nodded with a calm, dramatic surrender. Cornelia snapped out a brand new mission. She swore her curry minister needed battlefield backup because those sneaky bandits were closing in. As battle plans snapped into place, one girl totally misread the operation and thought she was heading on a carrot-filled picnic adventure. Tetsuo didn't take the promised reward. He turned it down flat, choosing to guard those survivor smiles instead of cashing in on their gratitude. Cornelia led the party into motion, ready to unleash pure chaos and carve through the bandits at that picnic. Even with the cheers in the air, Cornelia snapped that her army wasn't truly ready yet. One last crucial member was still missing. Elsewhere, bandits crowded around a cave, totally clueless that a disaster was gearing up to crash down on them. Thick with a hangover and drowned in groans, one bandit stumbled awake, totally clueless as danger crept closer and doom lined up right in front of him. As the bandits swayed drunk with power, they shoved ale in their mouths and laughed, completely blind to the danger creeping closer to the village. They taunted the defeated defenders, crowing that they'd crush the lone girl who fought back with zero trouble. A cold plan to wipe out the village was tossed around like it was nothing, until a sudden figure lurked in the shadows and overheard everything. Fury detonated in the boss's chest, and he shut his subordinate up with a brutal punch straight to the face. He barked the rules: steal for profit, not for meting out mindless slaughter. With a chilling grin, the bandit boss sketched out a brutal plan to squeeze profit from enslaved villagers, forced labor. He pitched a long-game plan to quietly seize power, using underworld contacts to keep outsiders from ever getting in the way. The gang erupted into cheers, hungry to cash in on the villagers, before anyone even bothered to stop and think about more bloodshed or another forced relocation. The order hit, and the bandits scattered to get moving, only they had no idea their whole scheme was about to implode fast. Panic detonated the moment a shaking scout burst in, swearing a dragon was right there, right nearby, something no one could believe. With a smug grin, the bandit leader yanked his sword free and stepped forward, ready to bully the dragon everyone was talking about. Instead of a single dragon, a whole army of monstrous skeletal worms surged forward, towering and grotesque beyond count. Cornelia's crew barreled into Tsuya and Mayu's turf, everyone on edge for a fight, while Cornelia grinned like trouble was finally here. With theatrical glee, Cornelia barked orders to her terrifying summons, and her loyal umbral wormhort tore through everything, unleashing pure destruction. Tetsuya and Mayu stared in pure disbelief as their leader spun out in dramatic style, and that towering power left them shaking. Dragon zombie monstrosities towered over the shaking bandits, their stats impossible to fathom, crushing everything with an undead force that wouldn't stop. One blazing blast wiped out half the enemy ranks in an instant, burning their life points away with 0 survivors. Then the same devastating blast happens again. Cornelia beamed as her creations tore into the panicked bandits, their skeletal jaws snapping shut with ruthless, unstoppable fury. Elsewhere, Maria cracked the survivors with ruthless interrogation, snarling for gold and valuables, and even forcing a rare wrestle comb into her grip. Bloodied and relentless, she slammed another thug under her heel, crushing the cowards without a shred of mercy. As the bandits shrieked, the bunny warrior tore out fast, grinning like it was effortless, watching her forces crush everything around them. As chaos tore everything apart, Fox girls fanned out and stripped the fallen, grabbing weapons, gear, and anything that even looked valuable. Tetsuya froze at the cave's edge, crushed by the wreckage, and hit by a surreal, overwhelming power spilling out like a storm. Cornelia thrust her magic orb upward, ready to unleash the deadliest spell she had left and wipe out the last of their enemies. Umbral Howell unleashed a storm of explosions across the night, and terrified bandits shrieked, scattered, and fell apart in total panic. In the blink of an eye, the mountain disappeared. Smoke billowed, silence snapped in, and panic surged through everyone nearby, hitting. Tucked among the branches, Tetsuya watched in total calm, and then he clocked it. This wasn't meant to finish them for good. Chaos erupted in a flash as the enemy launched a brutal counterattack, cutting allies down fast. No coordination, no defenses standing in place. A mysterious figure lurched into view, sending chills through the survivors with that wrong, inhuman presence, and a stride that didn't even flinch. Tatsuya burst into view, hemmed in by bodies, and the moment he saw the damage, he realized he'd wildly underestimated how brutal his opponent was. They clocked him the second he stepped in. His shaky posture screamed danger, and everyone instinctively backed off, knowing there was real power hiding in it. Ouroboros's whispered legend surfaced again. Once legendary swordsmen now vanished into the forests, swallowed by outlaws. Orders rocketed through the ranks, capture him alive at any cost, until even rumors started swirling among the fighters closing in. With every side closing in, he snapped, refusing to surrender because guilt and justice would only spell his death, so he chose resistance as his only way out. Sword held high, he demanded a fair duel, anything but dying without striking back. Once a loyal swordsman, Ouroboros had been cast down from greatness, but even in ruin, his pride in every clash still stood unshaken. Claudia studied his stubborn resolve in silence, weighing the dangerous choice of granting the dying man's request. With a steady, quiet calm, she tapped the farmer's arm and silently urged him to take the duel. Stunned by her move, he reluctantly got himself ready, because suddenly he understood. Everyone wanted him to step up and take on the swordsman. Doubt snapped through the crowd, and the big question hit hard. Can a farmer swinging a hoe really be their strongest? Even with doubts gnawing at her, she declared with iron confidence that the farmer standing before the swordsman was truly unbeatable. A violent shockwave ripped through the air, and you could tell the brutal clash had already erupted. With one brutal strike, the farmer slammed down Ouroboros and crushed it in an instant, Everyone froze, stunned by the sheer force of his body. He looked calm and unshaken, but his raw strength threw everyone off. And that's exactly why fear crept in at how effortlessly he crushed the competition. Even after all that power, they still saw the real man, humble, kind, and fiercely self-reliant, like there was a whole hidden depth behind the strength. Her cheeks suddenly burned as he flashed that bright, cheerful grin at her. Still unaware of the damage she'd just caused, she spun away in silence, hiding her feelings as her heart pounded with raw, unfamiliar tension. With the bandits finally beaten and locked down, the villagers rushed together, and the group was greeted with heartfelt, overflowing gratitude. While everyone celebrated, she flashed a soft smile, because she could feel it, something deeper had shifted between them that very day. All that hard work finally paid off. Treasure they snagged plus the village's donations all piled together into the reward they truly earned. As they argued over the rewards, Claudia snapped that their priorities were all wrong, while the others egged her on, laughing and joking like she'd be drinking again. Tatsuya offered Mayu a place to stay, and the moment he sensed she wasn't ready to say goodbye, he didn't let her walk away. A village elder stepped in, pushing her to face the feelings she'd been dodging and stuffing down. Maui. When you dug into her past, you finally saw it. Those feelings for Tatsuya had sunk in deep, burning hotter than ever. Tatsuya promised he'd always have his friends back, while their brand-new home slowly climbed into view behind them. Mayu hunched over her papers and painstakingly wrote down every number by hand, keeping the totals perfectly locked in without so much as a pause. Tatsuya stared wide-eyed, while she poured out her past and the business and accounting skills that shaped her. That casual four-digit mental math drop froze him mid-breath. He was stunned, totally blown away by how confident she was. Stunned by her skill, he jolted forward and clamped both hands on her shoulders, urgency blazing in his face. Without a second thought, he officially named Mayu their accountant, and the sweet, heartfelt appointment left her completely stunned. With Mayu running the money, the household's bookkeeping became razor-accurate. So sharp it felt like a professional accountant was on payroll. That night the whole crew cranked up the celebration, drinks in hand, non-stop laughter, and a feast that lit up the room. Curious Mayu took her very first sip of alcohol, and to her shock, it actually tasted pretty tolerable, leaving Tetsui himself genuinely impressed. After the party, the room fell apart in one wave. Most people slumped from pure exhaustion and too much drink, with empty mugs scattered all over the table. Tatsuya leaned in and grinned, spotting Mayu curled up and fast asleep, breathing easy and finally at peace after everything she'd been through. He jolted awake, and there was Mayu right beside him, proving his worst fear. She'd slipped out, wandered off, and drank herself silly. She clung to him with zero regard for logic or boundaries, booze roaring in her head as she desperately craved warmth and affection. Slurring through her words, she demanded to stay, and Tatsuya's stomach dropped as her relentless push left him panicked. When emotions finally surged, he hesitated, then gently stopped her, urging her to slow down, think clearer, and breathe calmly, too. Tatsuya pulled up their age gap like a red line, locking it in with cold, sharp foresight. Mayu threw in the towel and admitted defeat, because she finally realized Tatsuya could see straight through every clumsy, barely held-together emotion she tried to hide. Tatsuya drew a hard line in the sand. Nobody under 18, yeah, even adults who look non-human, gets anywhere near romance with him. Even as Mayu fought back, Tatsuya pressed the point. No matter what, society and readers would still judge the... He declared, stone-cold certain, that their publishing world would never let a relationship like that slide. Still, his conviction hit her like a spark. Mayu's blush deepened as she realized she didn't just like him. She respected him even more. Mayu's cheeks flared red. She blurted that she was already 20, begging everyone to stop the age mix-up. Then Tatsuya eyed her like she was joking, smirked her off, and told her to wait 4 long years. Mayu dug in her heels, insisting she was 20, then pointed to her brutal years of magical training like it was stamped on her soul. She said her training happened in a timeless pocket of space, freezing her body's aging the moment she entered. Tetsuya sat there in silence, stunned by her explanation, but somehow the wild logic hooked him so hard he couldn't doubt it. Maria spun in pure joy, crushed by the rush of their reward from the latest successful magical currency, decoding effort, though. Even though they were itching to turn it back into gold, the system shut them down cold, flat out refusing with zero mercy. Everyone crowded in, jaws dropped, as the book flipped open and spilled out more than 1,000,000 yen in stored value. With a cocky grin, the young man snapped that they finally had enough money to buy the thing they needed. Once you're inside the household, take over the counting and let Tetsuya focus solely on farming, growing food day by day. At last, their early essentials were sorted, the work was split clean, and the peaceful countryside life they'd built was ready to take root for good. Scaffolding shot up as their homestead sprawled, carving out room for more allies, non-stop work, and whatever surprise guests fate threw at them next. Out of nowhere, Tatsuya demanded that Mayu come with him, while Cornelia stayed behind, fixated on something like it had her under a spell. In the chaos of the ancient devil's return, whispers of a failing seal spread, threatening the peace they fought so hard to build and tearing it apart instead. Cornelia doesn't hesitate. She steps forward with iron resolve, ready to back Tatsuya and square up to the threat that's growing fast. Cornelia shuts the door on everyone else. Only she and Tatsuya are considered battle-worthy. The others doubt her choices, but she stands her ground and confidently orders Tatsuya to follow. No explanations, just pure command. Tatsuya starts to panic, and right then Cornelia shrugs. So casually she spells out what happens when the devil finally comes back in full force. Suddenly the light flips into something sinister. If that seal fully shatters, the whole world could collapse. Tatsuya and Cornelia cut across glassy waters and soon landed on a lonely island packed with secrets. Dense jungle sprawls around you, towering palms sway, and eerie creatures lurk in the shadows, masking the danger that's buried deep in the forest. Cornelius lunged in first, snapping bolts of lightning straight into a hulking knight, an ugly leftover monster drenched in old evil. She admitted the island was home to sealed devil remnants, and the moment the seal even slightly weakened, they started breaking free. 12 once stood watch over this place. Now Cornelia is stuck carrying the whole weight alone, with no help and no break. Long ago, after that magical realm's revolution crumbled, succubi like Maria were dragged away, exiled, punished, and left to pay the price. As the fight raged on, Tatsuya hauled Cornelia into the spotlight, praising her strength and her razor-sharp control of the island. Even after denying it, Cornelia quietly stepped in and carved out a safe haven for displaced succubi refugees. Even with all that authority, she admitted she could only hand over the land. Nothing more, not protection, not changes, not even a cleanup. She grabbed her things, ready to bolt, and fired a question at Tatsuya. What road was he taking next? Before Maria left, she pulled Tatsuya aside and begged him to hand-deliver a gift to her mom across the distance. Tatsuya finally reached the succubus village, a cut-off little haven, where the residents were quietly rebuilding themselves after years of brutal persecution. As he watched the villagers, their gaunt frames screamed of hunger, proving that beneath all that peace, neglect still lingered. The moment he showed up out of nowhere, the female villagers burst into nervous whispers, embarrassment, fear, and pure confusion all crashing at once. Watching their reaction, Tatsuya finally got it. This wasn't fear of the moment, it was real terror. A terrified succubus crumpled in front of a crew of strangers. Then, out of nowhere, surged up and claimed control over the others. Standing among the intruders were Sakagami and Morioka, once regular people, now they strut in with pure arrogance. Tatsuya caught sight of familiar faces tucked behind the trees, old escape buddies who now looked like they'd firmly climbed into power. He stared at the scene, stunned that they were leading the village, and wondering how everything here had crashed so badly. With a cocky grin, Sakagami bragged that his gold-generating power was the real reason he had the right to talk. Sakagami scouted the perfect hiding spot, then quietly built real power out of everyone the world had already discarded. He sat back, sure the Dark Knights wouldn't strike, then used pure fear to whip the succubus population into line. Instead of helping, they hoard the supplies and sit back while demon lords sweep up whatever mess is left. With those money-making tricks, Sakagami bribed the merchants to solve the shortage, then turned that need into a chokehold that kept paying for his domination. While the women caved to fear or need, Murioka soaked up wealth, fed her lust, and clung tight to total control. Sakagami snapped a warning at Morioka. Touch the sakabe and you'll drain your life force, then watch their control slip right out of their hands. Mocking laughter ricocheted through the halls as those men abused their power, turning women into nothing but tools for pleasure. Somewhere close, he couldn't stop thinking. How many heroes like him had already been swallowed by corruption and greed? They strutted and bragged about their riches, waving around the legacy of shady deals and a sweatshop empire that was built on cruelty and exploitation. The second he heard the company's name, Tatsuya's mind flashed to brutal hours, unpaid overtime, and that elite crowd's cold, crushing privilege. Tatsuya's breath caught as he snapped the corrupt corporate empire to his own past workplace experience. Out of nowhere, the two tyrants slammed down demands. Those succubi only had 1 week to produce results. Curiosity kept gnawing at him. Then Tatsuya heard Devil's Black Rose, and a wave of dread hit, slamming his mind with weird, buried memories. From the shadows, a hooded woman lunged into view, her fury blazing as she demanded to know where his loyalty truly lay. Thinking he was her enemy, she snapped, firing supernatural rage that crushed Tatsuya with a brutal wave of spiritual wrath. Sophia's attack faltered mid-swing. Then she crumpled to the ground, spent by sheer effort, leaving the villagers staring in shock and total confusion. Seeing her drop, the succubi sprinted in, blurting her name and begging for help, right then and there. They didn't back down. Rage lit a fire in every villager, so they grabbed weapons and geared up to strike back at every oppressor. Even while Tatsuya pleaded with everything he had, the crowd snapped to conclusions, assuming he was guilty and mistaking him for another one of their enemies. With her final breath, Sophia rasped a dying message, "Send my love to my daughter." Sophia's tears spilled as she snapped, "I'm such a fool," because she feared her warning would hit too late. Later that evening, Tatsuya snapped at the Tsukubai for standing down, baffled by how powerful they were, yet how obedient they stayed. Sophia laid it out plainly. Their power dries up without carnal energy, and once that happens, Morioka and Sakagami can seize control. That devil's black rose, an unheard-of bloom that only shows up once a year, gets ripped away from the succubi, forced into someone else's hands. Sophia swore that Maria's no ordinary virgin. She clings to a special kind of food to keep her power blazing, shutting down the usual succubus rules. Tatsuya figured out that succubi hate garlic, and they were unknowingly getting weaker, thanks to old cultural rules, not because their bodies demanded it. Inside the hut, he grabs at the one question that matters: why did their attacker strike? But the elder just waves it off, calling them nothing more than run-of-the-mill thugs. Thou confidence might be loud, but he's still worried. Those future threats could blow up fast, and pure energy won't keep the village safe for good. An elder drops her gaze, and Tatsuya's offer hits like a revelation. His plan demands an intimate sacrifice. Drowning in a swarm of eager succubi, Tatsuya snaps to the truth. His carnal energy could be the secret that fuels their power. Staring down a massive horde of ravenous succubi, Tatsuya can barely keep up as their non-stop request crashes into him. He doesn't back down. He takes their offer head-on, blazing with courage, swaggering pride, and maybe a touch of reckless hope. Just when the numbers crush in on them, Tatsuya finally realizes his magic isn't infinite. It has a critical limit, and it's running out fast. Even with pure determination burning inside him, exhaustion crashes in, and his body starts to buckle under the wild, relentless surge of energy. Morning light slices through the hut's patched roof, sealing the end of a wild, sleepless night. Rising from bed, Tatsuya sweeps across the room. Row after row of succubi are sprawled unconscious, drained dry, but somehow perfectly satisfied. Sophia throws him praise, and suddenly 100 succubi flare back to life, glowing with renewed energy and ready to fight. Steam curls around him in the bath as his Lord of the Night's skill finally lands, and the power hits his reflection hard. The moment he steps outside, this massive crowd swarms in, and suddenly panic explodes because none of this was supposed to happen. Realization hits like a truck. 10 more villages are waiting, and the elder finally admits it with a trembling voice. Each one has a fresh swarm of 100 succubi. Sophia drops the truth, and 1,000 succubi across the island start waiting with bated breath for his sacred help. Panic hits like a truck, danger sense blasts to life, and Tatsuya realizes this fight could end him for good, like for real. The elder clocks his hesitation, reminding him, right there, that he's their only hope and that his title comes with a duty he can't ignore. Suddenly, divine energy bursts into his soul. His strength surges to life as he rises, unlocking a radiant, godlike power. A brand new power explodes to life. Nightmare's Lord awakens as Zero's evolved skill finally ignites. Something inside him surges. Tatsuya hears the skill's voice snap into place, sharpening his purpose with laser focus. Supportive succubi gathers around him again, grinning like they've got his back, and promises, no guarantees, he won't face this alone. Tatsuya feels determination surge inside him, clenches his hands tight, and answers fate's call with fearless, unbreakable grit. Passion erupts like wildfire, and his name thunders through the chamber. He's reborn as the legendary peerless Night Lord. Willpower fuels him. He dives in without pausing, without fear, without holding back, throwing every ounce of himself at one single purpose. Tatsuya's final resolve clenches like steel, and he accepts his fate. Then he starts taking on the island's crushing request, step by step. Asaki calmly peels off her top while Tatsuya stares, demanding answers about what her people are rumored to be planning. Across the hall, the girls huddle together like it's nothing, totally unfazed by how Tetsuya's acting with other women. Instead of jealousy, every girl rallies behind Tetsuya, cheering for his freedom and giving him all their attention. Mayu sits in quiet realization. She finally understands she let it all in the second she fell in love. Mayu stands there, flooded with supportive smiles, and answers in silence, owning the fact that she belongs with people who truly get her. Laughing together, the girls reassure each other. None of them care about sharing Tatsuya's affections, and they keep going. Openly, Tatsuya's mind reels as their approval crushes him. He gapes in disbelief, stunned that the whole crew even agreed. That night, a succubus climbed on him and thrust in a feverish rhythm as their pact surged, turning everything intensely physical. In that dim room, exhaustion hits hard. Bodies scatter as Tatsuya stays planted in his seat, barely holding himself upright. Under moonlight, dripping with sweat and pure panic, Tetsuya crumples to the ground as more women close in, all insisting it's their turn. With just an hour left, the commander storms through the ranks, rallying his units and drilling them for the enemy's ruthless deadline. The women explode into cheers and lift their weapons high, their wild energy blasting through the entire hall. Standing before those two men, the older woman steps forward, and her troops fall into line behind her, silent as death. Startled by the sudden movement, one of the men jerks around, confused, because the elder just stands there, silently daring him. Shadows crawl across her face as she flat-out rejects them, and the tension in the room snaps into place. Crackling with raw magic, the bald man sneers at the elder, mocks her strength like she's nothing, and his certainty crumbles, because resolve completely. He rips into her in front of everyone, claiming he'll kill her while the crowd stares, and it's his arrogant boldness that leaves her rattled. Suddenly, a fist rockets at him out of nowhere, slamming his words to a stop with a swift, silent strike in mid-motion. With a shockwave of power, the warrior crashes in with a direct hit, sending the man flying backward through the air. He crashes to the ground hard, muscles twitching as his body refuses to answer the impact. Dozens of women swarm the enemy, closing in with weapons raised to pin him down. Then they roar battle orders like they mean to end him right there. Even with thunderous hits crashing down, Elder and Tatsuya stay locked in, clamping down so the opponent has nowhere to slip away. The enemy crumples there, frozen, stunned, and utterly drained, while the women and Tatsuya stare at his shocking, unexpected weakness. Wao Wan's eyes lock in, and when the group pushes forward with full force, she readies herself to smash the last remaining target. Battle shouts ricochet across the island as every unit surges in, dead set on stopping the enemy's escape for good. For months, he hunted down dark remnants, and when the last piece clicked into place, he finished his potion with hands that shook, half in fear, half in pure electric excitement. With a snap of power, he unleashed an overpowered golden golem that towered over everything and rattled the village to its core. When the golems finally crashed onto the battlefield, they smashed through the defenders so hard that panic hit. Then the women realized, cold and clear, that there was no escape. They were totally surrounded. With earth-shaking stomps, the golem barreled forward as villagers scattered in panic, terrified by the deadly power he unleashed with pride. With the power surging through him, he rode high atop Golem's shoulder and blasted his claim of supremacy, sure that nothing could stop him now. Shovel blazing overhead, the farmer barreled forward and slammed into the towering enemy with a brutal surprise attack. He cut straight through the villain, declaring him meaningless, and shut down any chance he'd get another second to matter in the story. With one lightning-fast strike, he cracked the golem's core wide open, and in an instant his unstoppable power flipped the whole fight. A brutal final shockwave tore across the sky, and just like that the battle died. Silence swallowed the island and defeat crushed everything. The summoner crumpled beside his shattered creation, and the villagers erupted in cheers for the unlikely hero who just won. Reveal. When the farmer finally dropped his real identity, he barreled straight at his former allies, blasting them with his sudden power and leaving them stunned. With defeat breathing down his neck, the bald villain clawed at the sky and unleashed lightning magic, fighting for a win even without a final strike. Sulfia got trapped in a magical snare, and it instantly proved that their enemy's threat was still every bit as deadly. The bald man gripped everyone as hostages and blasted mana into his spell with ruthless, unstoppable determination. Villagers burst into laughter, then freed Sophia on the spot, and the hero just sat there wrestling with his next move, because it was anyone's guess. He was shoved to his knees in pure humiliation, and the villain leaned in, pressing him with the question, was surrender the only road left? Out of nowhere, a minitruck ripped straight through reality, careening out of control as a furious voice screamed about the brake pedal getting mixed up. Two enemies got smashed out of the sky midair, hurled like broken dolls, right when their magic plans crumbled and pure chaos erupted. Tires screeched as the car slammed to a halt, and the villagers just stared, mouths hanging open at the surreal entrance. Out stepped his unexpected allies, grinning like he just strolled in fashionably late to the party. Shocked by what came next, one girl caught sight of faces she knew, twitching on the battlefield floor as she gasped. As Tatsuya's crew burst in, asps snapped and spread fast, spelling out that they were linked to Cornelia's closest, most trusted followers. The villagers, curiosity snapped into pure awe when they saw the powerful mage bow respectfully to Tatsuya. He squared his shoulders and declared, loud and sure, "I'm no hero or soldier. I'm just a proud, skilled farmer." While they chewed him out for showing up late, he just grinned. His job was already finished. Maria burst into the scene crying, sprinting straight into her long-lost mother's open arms like fate finally snapped into place. Warmth surged through the crowd as the two clung to each other, finally breaking the years of separation and the ache that had been killing them inside. To celebrate peace, the whole group ditched their usual clothes, slipped into swimsuits, and announced, finally, the long-awaited break at the beach. Laughter crashed over the waves as friends splashed in the sunlight, and for the first time, they finally let their guard down and relaxed. Under swaying palms, grills crackled and sizzled as everyone dug into skewers, trading smiles, stories, and pure good vibes. Games burst across the water, laughter rolling everywhere, and everyone soaked up that rare, hard-won peace after the storm. Tatsuya got showered with thanks for saving the island, then brushed it all off with a quick, modest line like the whole thing didn't even matter. And they got shoved out to sea, drifting farther and farther away, while the defeated villains spit out curses, crushed by the punishment, powerless and utterly humiliated. Food sizzled on the grill, drinks clinked in everyone's hands, and that victory feast turned into a full-on beach party celebration. A few girls fell silent, torn between hope and doubt, like they weren't sure they had the right to stand in all that open celebration and hard-won relief. Tatsuya got hit with special requests from the crew, promising he'd grill it without a drop of sauce for a select few. Devil boar, shellfish, garlic chives, and some seriously sketchy sea beasts, plus an ultra-bizarre mix of everything else, got dragged together for one cursed meal. Someone tossed a handful of oysters into the mix, sure their next idea was too good to keep, something they needed to cook up and share together. Tatsuya kicked off the meal, skewering oyster meat, while they carefully dusted everything with seasoning and piled on fresh veggies. Oysters sizzled on the grill, their juices bubbling like fireworks, and the whole crowd's eyes snapped to the final preparation. The final plate, oyster a la Gio, was crafted with extreme care, and they left the garlic out to match everyone's sensitivities. Tatsuya broke down what each ingredient did, feeding folks who couldn't touch garlic but still needed power, because every bite was their lifeline. That rich, mouth-watering flavor hit like a spark, instantly satisfying everyone and leaving them stunned with surprise. Their bodies roared back to life after that oyster dish, and strength surged through them like a punch. Watching their faces, Tatsuya figured peace was finally coming. He had no idea chaos was gearing up to crash in right after. While the celebrations rolled on, a bunch of relaxed revelers downed drinks and just waited, night after night, for the usual late-night chaos to hit. Tatsuya fell into silence, then realized he'd already tangled with every girl on the island. Nearby, the older woman ate alone in dead silence, then locked eyes with Tatsuya, like the whole room just stopped breathing. Most of the party crowd keeled over from pure exhaustion and too much alcohol, but Tatsuya chose to slip away and retreat instead of sticking around. That night, he kept vigil over the sleeping elder, heart-pounding, unsure what fate was about to hit next. Tatsuya burst into the room, and there was Sophia, wide awake and waiting for him in the dark. Meanwhile, Tatsuya kept waking up again and again in the middle of the night. She blurted out that their fighting sparked real attraction, and as her succubus instincts surged, he shoved it down, completely stunned by how far she'd come. Sophia, laying out her true nature, insisted that strength hooks them no matter what they look like or what age or rank they wear. Smoke suddenly blasted into the air, and before Tatsuya could react, everything flipped in the blink of an eye. Through the thick haze, she finally emerged, transformed, focused, and her intentions suddenly crystal clear. Tension snapped tighter every second, and Sophia, looking suddenly way younger, declared with full confidence that their seductive spark would never, ever run out. Tatsuya, still reeling from her shocking transformation, blurted out her age, and then demanded to know which form was the real one. He shrugged off the question like it was nothing, explaining that age hardly mattered to succubi. Sophia blurted the secret she swore to guard, and as she charmed him, Maria burst through the door. Maria tore through the door, seething because Sophia had vanished without a single word to her. Right after Tatsuya came back from his trip, Mari snapped out of nowhere and ambushed him. Her longing had only grown hotter and sharper. Before he could even react, both women stepped forward boldly, daring him to move while his hesitation got left in the dust. Even with all that boldness pushing him forward, he dug in. Moral reasons clenched his gut, and he couldn't ignore the fear of what would happen if he crossed that line. The women pressed in even harder, and their faces made it almost impossible to say no, right as his doubts started to fall apart. With no room left to argue, Tatsuya threw himself into their deal, accepting it fully, while a nasty nosebleed dripped down, his resolve blazing the whole time. Once they agreed, Tatsuya stayed with them all night, and their burning passion refused to fade until the morning light. He introduced me to Cornelia, and once she tasted it, she got completely hooked on the flavor and all the wild possibilities it opened up. Hyped up, she ordered her mages to dig deep and master miso from every angle, through alchemy and intense magical research rituals. With everyone backing her, she seized the soybeans, kicked off production, and mapped out deliveries to rake in profits for the villages. Tatsuya even brewed rough, homemade sake, sticking to tradition and feeding their secret, self-sufficient farm life from start to finish. Sake's popularity exploded with the girls. By the time anyone tried to sell it, they'd already cleared every last drop. Scanned the fields obsessively, making sure every stalk stayed on track and the harvest kept growing. No interruptions, no setbacks. Maria kept the crops moving, while Arisa crushed the selling, shipping it across the human territories and taking the bulk of the heat off her shoulders. Since some crops didn't sell, Cornelia took over and scrambled to move every last bit through other distribution methods. They locked in a 70-30 profit split, tilting hard toward Cornelia. Yet even with the deal in place, she clearly wasn't happy on. Under Cornelia's command, the brutal Cyclops workers hauled heavy goods through the jam-packed settlement, powering the whole logistics chain with sheer muscle. Those financial records screamed steady profits, and it instantly lit up Mayu, especially after she finally got her newly crafted abacus in hand. While everyone else kept grinding, Cornelia kicked back like she always did, doing nothing while her subordinates took over the heavy lifting. While their daily routines ran smooth, harvest after harvest rolled in like clockwork, quiet, steady days that kept their whole slow-breathing farming life right on track. Out of nowhere, fiery meteors tear out of the sky, smashing their calm into pieces with sudden explosive tension. A sudden explosion ripped through the fields, and chaos erupted fast, while he just stood there, frozen in place, still clutching vegetables in his hands. Smoke trails slashed toward far-off craters, and he let out a heavy sigh, because he knew he had to track down that sudden disturbance. Vast impact zones tore across the forest, and deep inside them, weird round objects pulsed with faint, eerie energy. Round capsules sat death, still in the crater, hairline cracked, barely clicking, while the tension crept higher and higher. Two winged humanoids drifted into view, calm as ever, standing statue still, silently showing off their outfits, their sharp horns, and their perfect posture. They had strange, almost unbelievable origins. At first glance, one looked female, the other male, but either way, they weren't your average forest wanderers. Out of nowhere, the black-haired kid strode forward like they owned the moment, and that sudden, crushing silence caught everyone completely off guard. Out of nowhere, he slid over a business card, and it tagged him to a shady group called the Bureau of Excellence. They step forward and swear they're Kronos' loyal aides, the demon lord who rules over every inch of space-time control. With Flair by their side, they named Coco and Lulu, and teased that other ruthless demon lord factions were out there, wielding power of their own. Meanwhile, Kronos watched it all from a distance, trading sharp takes on Earth's wild humans while sensing a fresh divine awakening lurking nearby. While he was processing the term deity, he caught himself half joking, like maybe his farming skills were straight-up divine. Everyone started hunting for the awakened one, but not a single soul stepped forward to claim that massive, terrifying, unknown kind of magic. Visitors spilled the truth about a power that could shake the world, something untouchable, far beyond mere skills or any lowly class rank. A sharp suspicion sparked in him, and once they finally surfaced this mysterious earthling, he leaned in and quietly grilled them about their real intentions. Without even blinking, the winged kid snapped that it was time for total extermination, because whatever was there felt way too dangerous to leave alone. When the farming results wouldn't line up with the readings, confusion crashed in. Then someone dropped the bombshell name, God of Lust. It hit him like lightning, one brutal, awkward truth snapping into place and lining up every answer he'd been dodging. Right as he tried to deny it, Lulu prowled in, sniffing the air until the unmistakable divine aura hit her like a bull's. Teasingly, Lulu called him out. His lust god energy blasted out way too loud to hide for even a second. Then the mockery kept rolling in as they tore his secret wide open. His innocent act finally died, and nobody believed him anymore. Even with his denial, that flustered answer only fueled the suspicion, and turned everything even more awkward. Throwing Cornelia's name out was a desperate bluff, but for a heartbeat, it stopped everything cold. Laughter burst out as the demon kids shredded his excuse, screaming it was childish, ridiculous, and totally unbelievable nonsense. Even though annoyance was boiling in him, he had to remind himself those were their kids, and the nasty insults had only gotten sharper. He forced himself to stay calm, telling himself, "You're 30, don't fold to childish provocation again." Mockery surged. She started flinging brutal insults and throwing threats at him, and every teasing jab cranked the tension higher and higher. He fought to stay calm, jaw clenched, quietly counting primes in panic just to stop himself from cracking. Even when he begged for proof, the demon waved him off, calling his claims sloppy, disgraceful, and total nonsense. Doubt kept gnawing at him, no hard proof in sight, so he pointed at Ouroboros, Cornelius' servant, as the one indirect sign he had. Ouroboros hesitated, forced to admit Cornelius' spell had vanished. Now he stood there with nothing to prove it at the worst possible time. Once the protective barrier vanished, he realized it didn't last forever. It expired like a software license and demanded renewal. Chaos almost blew up in their faces, but when extermination got brushed off as a joke, the tension snapped back fast. Before the fighting even started, they demanded proof. Survive first, prove your worth second, and only then would they stand behind you. They handed him a trial. If he could conquer it, he'd prove his divine power was worth having. She kept mocking him nonstop. Then he finally snapped, firing back with razor-sharp fury, ready to square off and strike back. Just like that, the challenge kicked off. He was called into the living room, tense and ready to take on whatever came next. To his shock, the first trial didn't sprinkle any magic at all. It turned into a hardcore Othello showdown. He was totally thrown off, but he still swallowed his confusion and accepted it, because this world's Othello hit him harder than any demon ever could. Sweat poured down his face as panic hit. He couldn't shake the fear of losing, while she strutted in with a smug grin, acting like her skills were unstoppable. Observers warned him no one had ever beaten her, not once, so he sharpened his focus, because in his mind, quitting was never on the table. The match kicks off with pure awkward tension as the man fidgets and blurts out, "Which color piece looks better?" Lulu tears into him with brutal mockery, and the others crack up, because his total cluelessness about the game is pure gold to them. He grabs the black pieces and throws down the gauntlet, pushing everyone to snap into focus and take the match seriously, right as the moment the first move lands, it hits him. He's realizing just how badly he's outmatched. Against all odds, he somehow claws out a win, shocking everyone and leaving Lulu utterly stunned that she just lost. Lulu shot one more glance at the board, her eyes shaking as the truth hit. She'd lost again. She slumped in stunned disbelief as he stayed cool and pointed out, like it was obvious, that she didn't even know the first thing about basic Othello strategy. Replaying that brutal moment in his head, he couldn't believe it. Here, even games felt like pure power. Her tears surged as she crumpled to the ground, refusing to swallow defeat even as pride screamed at her to keep standing. Lala, burning with fury and guarding her sister like a shield, charged ahead and snapped at him, furious that her little sister had been brought to tears. Tatsuya froze in silence while Lulu's rage erupted, and then, bam, some wild, strange energy slammed into his body. His emotions finally broke loose, rage, sorrow, and pride spilling out, until a cold calm settled in, crystal clear and focused. Locked on the crying girl, he suddenly understood it. He felt free at last, unchained from his old restraints and every last doubt. As Lulu sobbed, Kronos leaned in and told her that only discipline could fix the damage done to anyone who dared to disrespect divine responsibility. Yaka stood there, stunned as he vanished, his power still roaring in her head, while Tatsuya muttered to himself like he couldn't believe it either. He never saw it coming. Emotion crashed over him, and Tatsuya's hands moved on their own, ripping his buried power awake from deep inside.